action.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here? As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
And welcome into the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show, 3:31 on a very pleasant Tuesday afternoon.
So far.
Yes, I was about to say, I think you could call it the calm before the storm. We've got television on in the studio, and I should be asking you, Stel. I saw the maps there, and I saw a lot of red and yellow. And
most of it's south of here, yes.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's where I'm flying tomorrow, south of here. So, again, welcome into the show. My partner, Tim Jones, is out today and tomorrow. He is in Washington, D.C. at the annual ALEC Legislative Conference. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. And joining us is Paul Kurtman from the Paul Kurtman Show, Saturdays from 9 to noon. Paul, how are you?
12 to noon.
12 to oh.
No, 12 to 1.
12 to 1.
Sorry, 12 is noon.
I expanded your show.
Yeah, you did.
9 to 12, right? You know, you get out here a little earlier and you get an extra.
I just went from a 1-hour show to a 3-hour show on Saturday morning.
And you get out of here an hour earlier. So, wow, you can't beat that. Stel, how are you?
Doing fine, buddy.
Good. Boy, we got a lot to talk about today, of course. A lot. Paul, I want to talk to you first. You know, you're our economic, financial guy. And it looks like that the United States, our government, or our country, has averted a major rail strike that could be happening next week. This agreement was supposedly hammered out in September, but some of the labor unions weren't on board with it. Didn't look like it was going to pass, so they're going to impose. Basically, Congress is going to impose this agreement on the workers. What do you think, sir?
I'm wondering exactly what does that mean? They're going to impose it on the workers. Like it's just the deal that they're going to get and they can take it or leave it?
Exactly.
Okay.
I think they tried to do the bargaining thing, union and management, and apparently because, freight is such an important part of our economy that the government has the right to basically impose a settlement on them.
You know, that makes a lot of sense because if that goes down, everything else shuts down and people start fighting for different stuff. Wasn't it Reagan when the air traffic controllers were going to strike? He said, well, don't strike or you're all fired.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of an imposition.
And, I was around, Stel was around. Stel, a lot of people say that was really the defining moment of the young Reagan administration when he took that action of firing the air traffic controllers.
Yeah, I would agree. That was an interesting time. Looking back on it, now that you mention it, that was very interesting, the confrontation that existed then. Yes.
A lot of people, Reagan was 40 years ago, of course, but what a transformative presidency, besides the fact that we had the longest peacetime expansion and all of that. But look what he did, first of all, to bring back confidence to America. We had lost it after Jimmy Carter and the Iran-Contra situation. But look at the strong actions that he took regarding the air traffic controllers. Look at the strong actions that he took against the Soviet Union at the time, that we were going to go head to head with them, that we weren't afraid of them, we were going to outspend them, we weren't afraid of them. And a lot of those things at that time, people were like, oh, this is Cowboy Reagan, he's going to get us into a war. But it all turned out for the best.
Yeah, thank goodness. I hope this all turns out for the best.
I do, too. A lot of people, when we were talking the other day, that Donald Trump has a similar kind of vein with Ronald Reagan, that he brought kind of a spirit back to the United States of our best days are not over yet, a strong leader. I will give Donald Trump, he was Reagan-esque in that respect.
He was. With Donald Trump, and also if he said he was going to be doing something, you could just count on him to do it.
Yeah.
That's how you could, that's what I always got from Donald Trump, and I kind of feel the same way about Ronald Reagan. Like if he says this is one of the things that we're going to move on, this is the agenda, this is something we got to get done, it's so refreshing when you have a president who's actually doing what they're saying they're going to do rather than just constantly, gaming the media or the people.
And that doesn't happen very often. During last week, during the holiday, Paul, there was a little kerfuffle at Mar-a-Lago that Dick Fuentes And Kanye West, or Ye, as he is known now, made a trip to Mar-a-Lago. That controversy still has not died down a little bit. People are talking about it. There are some of the Republican politicians and leadership are starting to come out and say this wasn't a very good idea, and some of them are Trump allies. I mean, is this something that is going to go away in a few days, or do you think this is something that could potentially linger?
I think it's something that could potentially linger, but let me just also say this. I don't know anything about Nick Fuentes. Like, I hear about him all the time, but all I know is this. Trump had dinner with a white supremacist. That word has been so overused. It's been used with people that clearly aren't. They use it with Donald Trump all the time. So at this point, by them saying that about Nick Fuentes, I don't know anything about the guy, but you can say that about him, and I still don't know if it's true just because that word is so way overused. So it'll probably linger, though, because they want to keep using that word and tying it and trying to find a path to get it tied to Donald Trump.
What if they have video and writings of his where he is talking about anti-Holocaust, that there was not denying the Holocaust, and saying he is which is weird to me that he calls himself a white nationalist, because his
he calls himself a white nationalist.
He calls himself a white nationalist.
Okay, well, that kind of settles it.
But your father's Hispanic. You're not. You have blood that supposedly white nationalists don't like. That's the curious thing.
So does he call
him.
himself a white supremacist or a white nationalist?
A white nationalist.
And is there a difference?
I don't know. That's what do you think?
I feel like there is a difference between a white nationalist and I feel like a white supremacist is somebody who is clearly a racist. Like, anybody with a different skin tone, they're worth less, right? But a white nationalist, how does being white play into being a nationalist? Is it really the same thing, or is there a different nuance to it?
Is white nationalist the cleaned up version of a white supremacist?
Is it white supremacy 2022?
I'm just asking questions here, Paul.
I'm asking questions too because I don't have any idea.
Hey, before we get to our first break, let's take a call from John. He wants to talk about the railroad strike. John, how are you? Welcome to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show.
I'm doing fine. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
Back about 66, I was working on the Santa Fe Railroad as a laborer. We tried to go on strike because we were making half as much per hour as the people on an assembly line and all around the Kansas City area. And President Johnson came in. He shut us down, and we were only on strike for like 2 days. We got basically maybe 10 cents an hour more. That was it.
And John, it's my understanding in this contract that it's not so much a question of wages. I think they're getting 24% increase in wages. It's a matter of sick time, that because there's been a shortage of workers, that a lot of these guys have been working a lot of mandatory overtime. And I think the company was making them take sick leave if they had to do, something that they wanted to take off or something. And that seemed to be the biggest sticking issue. It's not money.
Yeah. Now, what we had back then, they gave us some health insurance for Santa Fe Railroad, but you had to use Santa Fe doctors. You'd have to go to the hospital in Topeka, Kansas. And if you went to any other doctor, you paid full price.
So what's your opinion? Should these guys, I know that you tried to do it and they wouldn't let you back in the 60s, should these guys be able to strike?
Well, I think they ought to be able to do that. Everybody else has been able to do it to try to get a little better working conditions. But I was really disappointed. We even had guys that quit the Santa Fe Railroad and went to work for Boeing when they were in Wichita. And they stayed there about 3 months, and then Boeing laid them all off, and they lost their jobs. And then they tried to come back to Santa Fe Railroad, and some of them couldn't make it back because somebody else got in there too. So it was some rough times back then.
Yeah. John, thanks for your call. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Boy, just imagine, though, if there would have been a railroad strike, and then, they don't talk about it much anymore, but our diesel fuel supplies are still supposed to be incredibly low, which trains and trucks run on. I mean, we're heading for a
we are skimming the surface of normalcy right now.
We are. Hey, we'd like to take more of your calls when we come back on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. 314-912-1019. Just a heads up, we don't have a lot of guests today, so would love to hear your thoughts on the railroad strike. Would love to hear your thoughts on Kanye West, Ye, and Nick Fuentes and that situation. And a topic that I'm going to get into with Paul later is the Defense of Marriage Act. I think that's what they're calling it. It's looking like that's going to pass tomorrow, with 12 Republican senators adding on to that, which our own Senator Blunt was one of them. Looks like that's going to be a done deal. We'll get Paul's thoughts on that and get your thoughts when we come back on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 1019 94.1 News Talk STL.
We give you news, analysis, opinion, and more. Only on News Talk STL.
At 17 we fell in love. High school sweethearts. Love was so brand new.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center.
Support is sponsored by Blindster.com. Want to save 50% on new blinds? Blindster offers custom-made blind shades and shutters shipped to you at prices less than big box retailers. Right now, save 50% off any order during Blindster's Cyber Monday sale. Hurry, sale ends December 1st. Blindster.com. Accidents in Illinois, westbound 64 east of the St. Clair Clinton County line and southbound 55 south of 143. Picking up some volume into that road work westbound 44 at Elm. All lanes are reopened from earlier utility work east and westbound 44 in Gray Summit. Crowded westbound 64 Hampton to Bellevue. 11 minutes westbound 64 between 270 and the Boone Bridge. And a solid jam westbound Olive between Craig and 270. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic Center.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. First alert weather day this evening, mainly focused east and southeast of downtown. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm in the metro only through about 8 o'clock. Rain's not a guarantee, but any storms will be brief. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm. Otherwise, windy and turning colder overnight, a low down to 29 degrees, a much, much colder day Wednesday. We'll have sunshine, it'll be breezy, but the high just 40 for Wednesday. Thursday, dry, partly cloudy, and 44. That's the latest first alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
This is News Talk STL. News, analysis, and opinion from the voices you know and trust. News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and newstalkstl.com.
Hey folks, Tim Jones here for Jones Air and Water. You know, simply put, Jones Air and Water specializes in air and water treatment products and services to enhance easier and better living in your home or business. Yep, they can take care of both. And folks, before you start closing up those homes and businesses for the wintertime, you want to make sure your air and water is the best and purest it can be. This month, Everett Jones and the gang at Jones Air and Water specializing in 2 products for all you all. In addition to everything else they have, the Hydrotech HTO system to take out the hardness, improve the taste, and remove the odor from your chlorinated hard municipal water. In addition to that, the whole home humidifiers. Yep, the air, as you noticed, it's getting drier, it's getting sharper, it's getting more shock prone. You put those whole home humidifiers in there. Everett comes out once a year, checks those filters. That's all you need to do. Easy peasy. Over the past 25 years, a multitude of 5-star ratings from the Better Business Bureau on social media platforms as well. Everett Jones is an expert in air and water and making it better in your home. You can be a filter or buy a filter. 636-899-1040. Best yet, go to joneswater.com. That's joneswater.com.
From home improvement to replacement, do-it-yourself electrical projects can be shocking. That's where Grasser Electric can help. They've been lighting up St. Louis for years. From ceiling fans and dimmer switches to repair or replacing your electric. No job is too big or too small for your home or business. Grasser Electric will even install emergency backup generators. So call Grasser Electric today before the sparks start to fly. 636-441-5200 or go to grasserelectric.com.
This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
You get a shiver in the dark.
And welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. Tim is out today, but Paul Kirkman from the Paul Kirkman Show, noon to 1 p.m. every Saturday, is filling in with us today.
And throwing stuff around
and
the studio.
throwing stuff. It's that sounds really, when you knock that water over, it sounds really loud in headphones. It's like, oh, what happened?
That was my headphones.
Oh, was it?
My headphones literally fell off the top of my head.
Oh, okay.
So,
speaking of that, just to digress for a second, you ever gotten like scratches on yourself and you don't know how
yes,
you get them? I have one of those right now. I have a scratch that's literally from this side of my head all the way to the other side, on my bald head. And I was like, how in the world did I do this? It's like a scratch. And Becky and I have come up with what we think is that during the night she sliced me with her wedding ring across my head, and I'm like, wow, I thought you loved me. And you're trying to give me like a frontal lobotomy in my sleep.
So it wasn't that crown you were wearing.
It was not, but I was like, but I felt it this morning. Wow. I'm like, why do I have a scratch across my head? Strange.
Well, glad you got your hat on then.
I did. I am. 314-912-1019 is our lines to call in. Paul, before we went to break, we were talking about the Respect for Marriage Act, which it looks like it's pretty much a done deal. It will pass tomorrow. I think what got it over the finish line was a lot of people were concerned that this could lead to polygamy or other types of marriage. And I think what really put this over the finish line last week is when the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, endorsed this legislation. And then Mitt Romney, he endorsed it as well. And I think that was what helped get it across the finish line.
The fact that the Mormons endorsed it?
Yeah, I really do.
So what did that enter into at all? People's concern that it would allow for polygamy?
I think, and I think because they backed that it wouldn't do that gave it some legitimacy. Okay. No, you're like, I'm just saying.
Were their fingers crossed?
So I think that to a lot of senators it gave cover. Well, hey, if the Mormon or Church of Latter-day Saints says that this will not promote polygamy, then we can go
so
ahead
they didn't
and
endorse the bill. They just said that the bill wouldn't permit.
They endorsed
polygamy.
the bill.
Oh, so they endorsed
the bill.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And we've talked about this many times. The war of gay marriage, homosexual marriage. We've lost that war. It's legal. Now it's going to be codified into law with this. It's nothing that we can do about that. The real battle now is religious rights. And what I'm so fearful of, and Stell, you talked a little bit about this during the break, I am so fearful of what we're going to have in this country is what's happening in England and some European countries, that if a pastor or a preacher speaks against homosexuality or any other thing in the Bible,
stands up for traditional marriage,
that the government or people are going to say that's hate speech. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where our battle now is, to protect our religious liberties so that we can practice our religion in the way that we want to without the government telling us we can't. Boy, that sounds awfully familiar. Didn't we?
And
didn't we go through that already?
It's not just overseas. Go a few hundred miles north into Canada, and you've got that situation existing there. So it's spreading.
Yeah, there are preachers that have preached on traditional marriage. It's right out of the first book of Genesis. Yeah. And have spent a little time in jail over this kind of thing,
because it's hate speech, and you're not being inclusive and all of that nonsense.
Which is just so bizarre to me, though, because you would expect Christian people to have Christian beliefs.
Yeah,
and this is one of the mainstays of Christendom, going back to Jesus Christ himself.
Right.
And before. Right. So if this becomes one of those things that's used to, hopefully not ever put somebody in jail just because they espouse a view of traditional marriage, if it comes to that in America, then I would say the bill, I feel like I can already say this. The Bill of Rights is already out the window. Yeah. So much is already out the window. But now you have different political factions weaponizing our own system against other people just because they believe different things. There's no more freedom of belief. There's no more freedom of conscience.
Yeah. And I really do think that we're going to see a court case soon. And I think this would be law if Hillary Clinton would have been elected president and she had 3 Supreme Court justices. This would be law, and this is what scares me in the future, is that someone is going to bring a case, and they're going to say, and it's going to be a male or female, and they're going to have 2 spouses. And they're going to give all the arguments that the homosexual lobby used to justify their marriage. They're going to say, look, I'm married to these 2 people. How does that affect your marriage? How is me married to 2 people? How is that affecting society? I'm not hurting anybody. I'm doing what I want to do. We're in love. Tell me how this hurts society.
Consenting adults, love is love. They'll use a lot of the exact same arguments. But here's the thing, though, Chris. Don't you think, though, that the Supreme Court, if this gets challenged, this law, congressional laws can get challenged in the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court isn't deciding based on the legislation. It's deciding based on the Constitution.
Yeah.
So when you look at Roe versus Wade being overturned, it didn't really matter that they had it codified in law or not. It came to the Supreme Court as isn't this a states' rights issue?
And Paul, I'm glad you brought that up because I don't know the particulars. I should research it. But I heard that there were concerns that this Respect for Marriage Act could be considered unconstitutional. I don't know. Well, how do you think it could be considered unconstitutional?
I think it can absolutely be considered unconstitutional because when you look in the Constitution, and this is something, folks, you got to read the Constitution because, you will begin to understand. You'll begin to understand what the powers are.
Yeah.
And in Article 1, Section 8, that's where our representatives have authority over a very limited amount of issues. And everything that's not listed in that belongs to the states. And just because people back around the time of the ratification of the Constitution were just a little bit nervous that we would have mission creep in Washington, D.C., that's why they put the 9th and 10th Amendments in there, to make sure that those issues that weren't being explicitly given to the federal government belong to the states. Well, this is one of them. There is nowhere in the Constitution where you see anything about marriage. Not a one. And either we have to say that states do have their own individual sovereignty on issues, or they don't.
What do you think of people that some are on our side that are saying, you know what, the state or the church or the state shouldn't even be involved in this. It should be a church thing only. Get the state, or the other way around, get the state out of marriage. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm for that too because I don't like the idea. So what is a license? A license is when you don't have a right to do something, so you have to go get permission from somebody else.
A license is you paid a tax.
Yeah. You're paying a tax so you can exercise something that should have been your right to exercise in the first place. And I don't like the idea of any man or woman having to go to the government to get a license to get married. Now, we also have tax laws. Whether or not you're a married couple or a single individual is going to completely change the way the government approaches you for tax purposes. But I feel like we've already gotten a lot of that cleared up through civil union laws.
Shouldn't the government have a right, or lack of, not a right's the word, but to know who are cohabitating and creating families? Does the government have an interest in that? And I'm just throwing this out. Don't hate me, folks. I'm just throwing out the question.
I'm gonna go all the way back to my basic roots here.
Okay.
And the answer is no.
Okay.
We have a census that's constitutional because the government has an interest in knowing how many people are in the country that the government is trying to protect, right? Or protect their freedoms or whatever. But I don't think that the governor of Missouri or President Biden, some of these questions on the census are incredibly intrusive, and I just don't think the government has a right to know. When it comes down to things like marriage and who's getting married, marriage is different than just a union. Marriage, the word marriage, that is a religious institution. That's a religious institution. And so I don't like the idea of government being involved in marriage at all.
My father-in-law and I were having a discussion, or he was having a discussion over the weekend. We were talking about marriage, actually, and he was asking me where is the ceremony or marriage in the Bible, and I was saying that there is no ceremony that you're going to find in the Bible, but the institution, that's something that God instituted between a male and a female. You leave your father, cling to your wife, you have children. I think that's there. But there's no, this is how you perform the ceremony, you're married, correct?
Yeah.
Or is there?
Not that I'm aware of,
Okay.
but we do see in multiple places marriage ceremonies being taking place. I think of, oh, man.
Jesus turned the water into wine for a marriage
At a
ceremony.
marriage ceremony.
And Jacob, and then he married Rebecca and all them.
Yeah,
And
yep, that's right. That's right. So there's 2 marriage ceremonies right there. But at the very beginning, I mean, this was the first institution established and ordained by God was the holy union between a man and a woman, and that's the marriage. Now, it's one thing if people say, "Hey, we want to have a civil union. We want to be looked at as a couple for tax purposes, and we want to be seen as." But like you have people that are wanting to claim ownership over the word marriage, and that word itself has a certain jurisdiction just within the community of faith.
Can 2 people, a man and a woman, go out in the middle of the woods somewhere and proclaim their love to each other and say, under the stars and moon and nature, we are married and we pledge ourselves to each other forever? Does that constitute a quote-unquote marriage?
I think it can, for sure. I mean, when you look at old family Bibles at the very beginning, long before people were getting marriage licenses, what constituted their marriage, the record of that union, was at the very beginning, right in that Bible, that old family Bible. You can still see these in a lot of Bibles out there today. So-and-so joined with so-and-so in a marriage, and there's a date and everything for people to sign. So I think so.
Well, hey, did I turn the show into a religious show, Stell and Paul? But pretty interesting, I thought. Hey, when we come back, we'll have more talk. We'll also have David Stokes from the Show Me Institute with us at 422. Listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 1019 94.1 News Talk STL.
Welcome home to St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
Definitely not a Republican wave, that's for darn sure.
We start off with 2 words.
News, analysis, and opinion.
I am tonight announcing my candidacy.
Now the 2024 presidential election is in front of us.
The G20 summit.
Climate change and food security.
And I do not think there's any imminent attempt on the part of China to invade Taiwan.
1019 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Let me tell you about my good friends Mike and Beverly Sloan over at Elite Printing and Packaging. Going on their 21st year in business, a success story that began in Mike's basement and now employs hundreds right here in the St. Louis community. Elite is a turnkey solution for all your retail printing and packaging needs. Custom built to suit your business. Call 636-561-8970 or email elitesolutionsgroup.com. And don't forget to use the code word Patriot to receive free design and artwork for your first project.
The Range St. Louis West is all about safety. That's why training is a critical part of what we do. No one wants to be in a situation where seconds count, but help is minutes away. But if that day comes, are you ready? No matter what your firearm experience level is, we have courses and instructors that can help. The Range St. Louis West is the area's premier training facility, shooting range, and all things firearms retail facility. Check us out online at therangestl.com or stop by and visit with our professional staff. The Range St. Louis West. Are you ready?
News Talk STL is proud to have Doug Voss of Safe Money Radio as part of our lineup each week. Doug has been a staple on St. Louis radio for many years as one of the leading financial experts in the area. Doug and Safe Money Radio is on 3 times every weekend, but in case you miss anything, you can check it all out at DougVossSafeMoneyRadio.com or call 844-676-SAFE. That's 844-676-7233. Doug Voss is a registered representative. Securities offered through DHL Securities, LLLP. Member FINRA and SIPC.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019 94.1 and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting. After 8 months of occupation, the city of Kherson is finally back in Ukrainian hands, and allegations of torture in the region are mounting.
The Associated Press spoke to 5 people who alleged torture took place by Russians in the key Ukrainian city. 5 alleged torture rooms have been found in the city, along with at least 4 more in the wider Kherson region. It is there that people allege they were confined, beaten, shocked, interrogated and threatened with death, according to police. They allege they were forced to give information about relatives or acquaintances with ties to the Ukrainian army, including names and locations disclosed in handwritten notes. Human rights experts warn that the accusations made so far are likely only the beginning. I'm Karen Chamas.
The Senate's Respect for Marriage Act has progressives arguing that efforts to safeguard same-sex unions remain unfinished after concessions were made to Republican demands for bolster religious liberty protections. Details from correspondent Bernie Bennett.
The bill as it currently stands would officially repeal the Defense of Marriage Act and require state recognition of all legal same-sex marriages and interracial marriages, but would not codify the Supreme Court's 2015 ruling that legalized same-sex unions nationwide. Heritage Foundation fellow Roger Savino disagrees.
The Senate is currently considering a bill that would paint a target on the backs of people of faith who believe that marriage is a union between one man and one woman.
In a video released by the Heritage Foundation, Savino explains how Democrats are using the Supreme Court ruling to extend protections beyond what the law stands for. Bernie Bennett in Washington.
Senate Democrats are moving to quickly pass the bill while they still hold the majority in both chambers. The House would still have to vote on the legislation and send it to President Joe Biden. On Wall Street, a mixed day as the Dow was up by 3 points, the Nasdaq dropping 65, the S&P 500 lower by 6, oil up to $78.20 a barrel. More at townhall.com.
Relief Factor, pain relief that's natural, pain relief that works, and pain relief that attacks the source of the pain. That's the experience of tens of thousands of Americans who are taking Relief Factor right now. See their incredible video endorsements at relieffactor.com and then order your 3-week quick starter pack for just $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Find out if it can work for you like it works for me by ordering your 3-week quick starter pack today. relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Be the next success story.
Hi, this is Dennis Prager. As you know, the culmination of my life's work has been writing my Rational Bible Commentary series. I have done Genesis, Exodus, and the just-released Deuteronomy. They are all called the Rational Bible because my approach is entirely reason-based. So if you're looking for the perfect holiday gift, even for someone with no faith, in fact, especially, I recommend giving them my Rational Bibles. Go to PragerStore.com. You can buy them individually or as a complete set. That's PragerStore.com or click the banner on my website.
The Balenciaga.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored by Blindster. Want to save 50% on new blinds? Blindster offers custom-made blind shades and shutters shipped to you at prices less than big box retailers. Right now, save 50% off any order during Blindster's Cyber Monday sale. Hurry, sale ends December 1st. Blindster.com. All lanes were closed southbound 55 south of 143 to clear an earlier accident off the interstate. Looks like that left lane is still blocked. Westbound 64 east of the St. Clair Clinton County line, a crash involving 2 commercial vehicles. Westbound 64, the Poplar Street Bridge to 270, 13 minutes. Construction jams, traffic on Highway 94 in Defiance, and an accident northbound Highway 94 at Highway D. A crash southbound Lewis and Clark at St. Cyr. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic Center.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. A first alert weather day this evening, mainly focused east and southeast of downtown. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm in the metro only through about 8 o'clock. Rain's not a guarantee, but any storms will be brief. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm. Otherwise, windy and turning colder overnight. A low down to 29 degrees. A much, much colder day Wednesday. We'll have sunshine. It'll be breezy, but the high just 40 for Wednesday. Thursday, dry, partly cloudy, and 44. That's the latest first alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
This hour of News Talk STL brought to you by The Dental Link. Call Dr. Alan Link today, 314-794-6464 to schedule your free consultation. Offices in Baldwin and Melville, 314-794-6464.
When's the last time you checked your 401k balance? Well, let me prepare you. It's not pretty. The 40-year record high inflation has cost many Americans almost 25% of their 401k savings, and with a volatile market hinting at a possible worse recession, I'm worried. Are you? Meanwhile, President Biden was recently questioned at an ice cream shop if he was worried about the economy.
Our economy is strong as hell. Inflation is worldwide. It's worse off everywhere else than it is in the United States.
So you have a choice to make. You can sit back and relax like the president and act like nothing is happening, or you can be proactive and call Steve Auld of the Auld Financial Group and stop losing your money. Call Steve today and ask for that Stop Losing the Money plan. 636-230-8824. That's 636-230-8824. Or visit yourmoneymattersstl.com. Advisory services offered through Retirement Wealth Advisors, LLC, the All Financial Group, and Retirement Wealth Advisors not affiliated. Insurance and annuities offered through the All Financial Group.
No big old corporate lib AM station telling us what to say here.
Conservative talk for St. Louis. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1.
And always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
And welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. And sitting in today for Tim, my partner who is in Washington, D.C., the Swamp, as they affectionately call it. He's attending the ALEC annual legislative conference. And Paul Kirkman from the Paul Kirkman Show, Saturdays from 12 to 1 p.m., not noon to 12. Maybe that's in the upcoming future. I gave you 3 extra.
It's the shortest radio set. 12 to noon is the shortest radio show in the history of radio.
12 to noon. You can do it. If anybody can do it, Paul, you can do it. Hey, I want to talk about something local here for a second. And, we always joke about, the Friday the 13th movies and where it seems that the monster never seems to die. It just comes back over and over and over. And I'll tell you a quick story. The Friday the 13th that I was done with is when I think it was Freddy Takes New York or something, or Jason Takes New York. But these people went to the graveyard where Jason was buried. They were trying to dig him up or something. Lightning hit a shovel. The shovel got electrified or whatever, and it reanimated Jason. And I was like, yep, this will be... I was like, this will be the last one that I watch. But speaking of things that never die, Better Together. Can you believe they are trying? Yes, you haven't heard this? They are trying. Man. They are trying to bring this back. Sam Page said yesterday that this is something that we should all look at. Mayor Jones said it again. When are these people going to learn, Paul, that we don't want city and county reunited?
See, they know this. They have learned. But the thing is St. Louis City, they need the resources of St. Louis County. And so they're trying to convince everybody in St. Louis County just how much better it would be if we were just all together. It's a con.
But how can they make that case when the city is getting the bulk of the Rams money? I think they're getting like $256 million of that $500 million.
What happens though to the tax base? Listen, St. Louis County has some good economic advantages that St. Louis City just doesn't have. So how is this good for St. Louis? I already said, look, it's going to allow St. Louis City to tap into St. Louis County because this is really a one-directional positive, right? St. Louis City is going to get some good stuff from St. Louis County, but what is St. Louis County going to get out of it?
See, here's how they sell it, Paul. They'll say, we have a lot of duplicate services now, so we can combine the ambulance services, we can combine the police services, we can combine the dog catcher services, and this will save the taxpayers millions of dollars. That's how they sell it. We have a duplication of services. Why don't we combine them for the good of the area?
So could I make the same case and say, well, then why doesn't St. Louis County combine with St. Charles County? Could we go that direction and just say, hey, let's Better Together to the west?
Well, but unfortunately in that situation, you have St. Louis City and St. Louis County want to do this. I don't think St. Charles County or Franklin County or Warren County want anything to do with
we don't want to do it in Franklin County. Franklin County doesn't want anything to do with any of this.
Which, speaking of St. Louis City Alderman, I heard today, I think in 2022, or that is the year now, isn't it? 2024, next year, one of these years, that they're going to cut the Board of Aldermen in half from 28 to 14 wards. Each ward will have 20,000 residents. Paul Stell, I think now a alderman gets paid about 20,000, maybe 22, 25,000. There's a plan now to increase that for the part-time job, of course, to $70,000 a year. Board of Aldermen worth $70,000, Paul?
Well, I guess they might be if they get rid of half the Board of Aldermen.
I was looking at that myself. I was like, well, maybe that's where the cost savings are. I don't know.
I wonder whose idea this was, right? Like, you know, if this works, I'd like to see how these are written, because they're going to be written in a way that some people on the Board of Aldermen, they're going to be all for this plan, and the other half is going to be like, no, we don't like this plan. Let's rewrite this.
You just talk about dysfunctional. But, Stell, I don't know if you know this offhand, but I know the city of Chicago, their aldermen, I mean, they make six figures, don't they?
Oh,
I mean, that's a full-time job.
Yeah, not only is
they
it
get paid a full-time job.
Not only is it full-time, but it's lifetime.
Yeah, basically.
In a lot of cases, yeah. And as you guys were discussing it, my first thought was, what do you expect from a democratically run metropolitan city? Yeah, I can see them trying to figure out some way to get a salary of $70,000. And you're right, Chicago, the Democratic machine in Chicago is overloaded with aldermen that not only do you wonder how they got the job, we know how they got some of the jobs, but you scratch your head and you think these people don't belong in this position, but they get the gig. And it winds up being 20, 30, 40 years for a lot of them up there. So,
and what amazes me, now, could they make the case for this $70,000, Stell and Paul, that these aldermen need that money? Because if it wasn't for that, then we wouldn't have Jeffrey Boyd and Colin Muhammad and all of these other guys taking payoffs because the pay is so low. So maybe that we need it to be $70,000 so we can have honest politicians.
It would probably be a much simpler process, and it would probably cause a lot less frustration for the Board of Aldermen if they could just find a way to raise all of their salaries without having to limit the board. But this is a way that probably sits better maybe with the people. I don't know. St. Louis City seems to do a lot of stuff that is just totally wrong to begin with, but they always find a way, just to do it. So when's this going to happen?
The board. The board next year. That's a done deal. I think next year or it's either next year or 2024. The board gets cut in half. Also, I forgot to mention this stipulation that if the raise does go into effect, the $70,000 a year, that takes a place with the reduced board, not with the current older people. So I guess that makes it more palatable. I guess. Though.
Well, let me just say that. $70,000, if you were going to do that in Chicago, it wouldn't make any difference because you still have under-the-table stuff going on all over the place in Chicago. That's the Democratic machine up there. And I think most folks would agree that goes on here, too. But I don't think the salary will eliminate any of the shenanigans.
Yeah. Probably not, because when this stuff came out with Colin Muhammad and the people that are involved with them, I was not shocked at all. Not that I'm privy to the corruption in St. Louis City government, but I was like, this is how it's probably done all the time.
Yeah.
These guys just so happened got caught, and the person they were dealing with was wearing a wire and was trying to get a reduced sentence. But this happens all the time.
Happens all the time in Chicago. Yes, indeed.
Because they've given these aldermen, I mean, if you want to do any type of development project in a ward in the city, you have to have the sign off of that person, which gives them a tremendous amount of power.
Yes,
Chris, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I was doing a little bit of business consulting work in the city, and there was a woman who was on the Board of Aldermen, and she was basically running the whole show. She wasn't a developer, she didn't have any stake in it. She was running the whole show, and I've talked with state representatives when I was in the legislature, and the Democrats. They will tell you, they're like, it's kind of a fiefdom. When you get in here, you have to hobnob and do the right things with the right people and know who to rub shoulders with. Yeah. And it's a real fiefdom. Those aldermen and the Democrat political structure just really has a lot of control.
I mean, the St. Louis Democratic Party machine, it's not like Chicago or New York or some of the other, Detroit or some of the other big cities, but there are still remnants of it there. And even though I think that Cori Bush is not particularly particularly popular within the community. I think the reason that she was able to win her election is because that Democratic machine was still there. The apparatus of the clay machine was still there, where they have a absentee ballot program to go out to the nursing homes and to other people. They have vans to get people
in the graveyard.
To the poll, and then they get people to the graveyard. They have people that they pay. Republicans don't do this, but Democrats will pay people to stand on a street somewhere holding a sign all day to get publicity for their candidates. We don't do that, and that is part of that machine, and that's why she has won, even though I don't think she is particularly popular in the district. I really don't.
And let me just say, as a note of clarification, Lewis Reed was a neighbor of ours.
Oh, really?
In South City, yeah, and a very nice guy.
I was going to say, did you have any inkling he was corrupt?
Not really. No. But then again, coming from Chicago, I was on the lookout for it all the time, and whenever something would transpire, my first thought was, oh yeah, this is typical of the Democratic machine in a major metro area. So, but he was a nice guy, good guy to get to know as a neighbor. But no, I didn't suspect that anything like that would happen.
And I know we got some time left. We're going to have David Stokes from the Show Me Institute coming in today. Of course, we want to talk to him about this Better Together stuff and some of the other things that he is talking about. But I had a thought there and I completely lost it. Let's change gears here and go to China, which people are starting to follow that very closely. The zero COVID policy, which, we saw it here when they were locking people down, where people were getting depressed, people were getting angry because they were locked up. That was only, a relatively short period of time compared to China. Just imagine being locked up in your home for 2 years. Paul, do you think these demonstrations are sustainable, or do you think that once they kind of ease up, the Chinese will go back into the way they were?
That's what I think is going to happen. I think eventually it'll ease up. But I tell you what, if they keep doing what they're doing now, and if we often forget exactly how many people live in China.
Yeah.
And so like the demonstrations that we're seeing, these the police coming in and just manhandling some of these protesters, I don't even really know how much of the population that is. Even if it's 1 million people, that's nothing compared to the actual size of China. I think what's more likely to happen is eventually all of this goes away. And it will go away, especially with China. I mean, they're notorious for being completely brutal, right? So we'll see these protests go so far, and then eventually it'll stop, if history is any indication of what's likely to happen.
Now, there is one difference, and I mentioned this yesterday, between these demonstrations and what happened in Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square was one place. I mean, that was one area. Where's that? Shanghai, where Tiananmen Square is. These demonstrations are occurring all over the country, and I think that will make it a little. They have complete power, but I think the fact that these are happening around the country will make it a little harder to tamp down. And social media. There was no social media in 1989.
And in China right now, their social media is not what we have here.
Right.
But they still have it. There's still ways for them to communicate. They do still have social media. Yeah. It's just not as free to them as it is to us.
And I like the way that they are protesting. They are holding up blank sheets of paper.
White paper revolution.
Yeah, that is their protest.
I love it. How do you censor that?
Yeah, exactly. Here, censor this.
I think it's interesting that Apple has eliminated AirDrop for folks to actually exchange photos and videos, etc. Somehow they've stopped.
Is the government? Do you think the government has made them stop that? Probably.
Could very well be. But that was one of the focal points of folks being able to get together and AirDrop stuff. You're able to avoid all of the governmental restrictions that are there. And now all of a sudden, I believe as of yesterday, AirDrop's not available.
I just would, we live in a very safe country. We have freedoms. We don't really know what it's like to wonder if the police are going to come down and knock down your door, or some neighbor is, telling on you or something. But man, just think of the courage that these people have to do this. I mean, this is not like us here. Oh, okay, we might spend a day in jail or something. I mean, these people, you could do a protest like this and no one sees you again.
Yes.
Yeah, or you wake up the next morning with your kidneys gone.
Yeah, exactly. They do harvest. Yeah, you're right.
China, so in the legislature, you ever heard of Gowon Fong?
Yes.
Yeah, so we passed, for a state to do this, we had passed resolutions condemning China. We did this from Jefferson City, condemning China for their persecution of people that practice Gowon Fong, which is not a religion. It's just a meditation.
They're just exercising.
It's a meditation practice, right? But we had a guy testify in our committee. Him and his wife were kidnapped out of their own homes, put in prison camps, and they put them in prison cells near each other. And he listened in while his wife was being beat to death. Wow. And he managed to escape and came to the U.S. But this is the country that we're talking about. This is what China's doing, and this is the kind of government that they are. So for them to be able to stand up and protest and to be as creative and insightful to hold up a white sheet of paper, that would really roil those Chinese censors, and the people that are trying to lock everybody down. I think that these Chinese people probably have a much deeper appreciation for what freedom actually is than most Americans do at this point.
I remember, and Stell, you remember too, that during the Tiananmen Square demonstrations, they had made a mock Statue of Liberty.
Yes.
In Tiananmen Square. Right. So they definitely understand it. It's going to be a interesting situation because there's also criticism that President Biden is not being as harsh as he could be because he doesn't want to offend the Chinese leaders and he doesn't want the Chinese getting involved in the Russian-Ukraine war. So he is kind of being tepid in his response to these
tepid. You're being kind saying tepid.
Okay, tepid.
But go ahead, yeah.
All right. When we come back, guys, we're going to have David Stokes from the Show Me Institute. We'll talk to him about Better Together and some of the other things going on. You're listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL. Welcome home.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. First alert weather day this evening, mainly focused east and southeast of downtown. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm in the metro only through about 8 o'clock. Rain's not a guarantee, but any storms will be brief. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm. Otherwise, windy and turning colder overnight, a low down to 29 degrees, a much, much colder day Wednesday. We'll have sunshine, it'll be breezy, but the high just 40 for Wednesday. Thursday, dry, partly cloudy, and 44. That's the latest First Alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com. Want to save 50% on new blinds? Blindster offers custom-made blind shades and shutters shipped to you at prices less than big box retailers. Right now, save 50% off any order during Blindster's Cyber Monday sale. Hurry, sale ends December 1st. Blindster.com. Traffic moving again southbound 55 south of 143. Also in Illinois, an accident has all lanes closed on westbound 64 east of the St. Clair Clinton County line. That has traffic stacked up well east of Albers Road. Stop and go westbound 64 Kings Highway to McCausland. Crowded westbound 64 between Lindbergh and 270, and then heavy pockets westbound 4064, 364 to I-70. Roadwork jams Highway 94 in Defiance. Sounds like we just had an accident reported southbound 270 near Highway 370, and bumper to bumper southbound 55 between 44 and Potomac. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic Center.
St. Louis's place to talk.
Because that's where the votes are getting stolen. When you get into the facts and logic and reason thing, it drives me crazy because you're right.
I call it the oh my God virus.
News Talk STL. News, analysis, opinion.
Well, folks, as the saying goes, winter is coming. Many might say winter is here. Hanson's Tree Service has all the things that you need to make sure that your home is ready for winter. What am I talking about? How about removing those dead or decayed limbs? Winter is prime time, early winter, which is what we're in right now, prime time for trimming and pruning of your trees. Take care of them before they come down on your homestead. Also time to get on Hanson's schedule for winter dormant oil applications on your trees, which are some of your biggest, most important assets to prevent insects from taking shelter in them. And it's a great time for Hanson's to come out and put you on a preventative plant health care program to protect all of those trees, shrubs, bushes from disease and insects that go there in the wintertime because they gotta go somewhere. How about get some organic mulch? Hanson's will bring it right to your house. Keep that homestead ready to roll for the springtime when spring does come. HansonsTree.com. That's HansonsTree.com.
Hi, Sean Long for STL Fenceworks. For over 50 years, our time-honored commitment to quality, service, and affordability make STL Fenceworks the go-to authority for fence, deck, and leisure space projects. During these unsure times of severe inflation and supply shortages, you can depend on STL Fenceworks to meet your needs. Being the #1 fence and deck contractor in the state, we've leveraged our position to make contract buy-ins hedging against price increases. Also, our buying power has allowed us to stockpile fence and deck material. There are no shortages at STL Fenceworks. In fact, we have more fence and deck material on hand now than we have had at any time in our 50-year history. Lastly, our commitment to a quality and customer-first approach has never wavered. Your project will be completed by experienced craftsmen in a timely manner, and our lifetime warranty reinforces that commitment. STL Fenceworks warranty surpasses anything offered in the industry. Visit STLFenceworks.com and allow us to bring your backyard dreams to life. As always, at STL Fenceworks, your satisfaction is our passion.
Fox News commentary.
Gen Zers are setting a new record, and hint, hint, it's not necessarily flattering. I'm Tommy Lahren. Find out next.
Starting to realize your small business is a little overwhelmed by the holiday rush? It's still not too late to get all of your shipping and mailing under control with Stamps.com. Sign up right now, and you'll be printing your own postage in just minutes with discounted USPS and UPS shipping rates. Just go to Stamps.com, click the mic at the top of the page, and use code BUSINESS for a 4-week trial, plus free postage and a digital scale. That's Stamps.com, code BUSINESS.
Born in 1997 or any year thereafter, congratulations, you are in Generation Z. And while you might be young, spry, and tech savvy, you're also in the generation known for quiet quitting, TikTok addiction, and now this. Gen Zers are moving back in with their parents in record numbers. According to a new online poll, 54% of Gen Zers are foregoing independence to live with mom and dad thanks to Biden's economy. Rent, groceries, gas, everything is more expensive, but we can't just blame Joe because according to Pew Research, a greater percentage of this generation has moved back home than in the Great Depression. These modern youngsters readily admit it isn't due to just unaffordability, but also immaturity. They just don't want to be adulting on their own. And this is really pathetic. Though it may be tempting to have a live-in parental maid, chef, and caretaker, it certainly does very little for personal growth. So move out, get a job, work hard, pay your own way, kiddos. I'm Tommy Lahren.
The news and talk.
More than 230,000 people were stopped along the Mexican border in October.
That matters to St. Louis.
Americans are desperate for deals as inflation soars.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. We give you news, analysis, opinion, and more. Only on News Talk STL.
And welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. It's 4:30 on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon, but it is the calm before the storm. According to the weather forecasters, the weather is about to drop dramatically. So I told my wife, please put the electric blanket on the bed tonight. So I will be warm tonight. And we also have a hot guest.
What?
That's Dave. He's hot.
Yeah.
Dave's hot.
He's so hot that, yes.
He's very popular.
Yep.
They think he's a righteous dude.
David Stokes over at the Show Me Institute.
In high school, you talk about spike. I had a very short spike. It was
I knew there's some spike somewhere in there doing some spike stuff.
It wasn't very punky. It was more Leave It to Beaver-ish, maybe.
Gotta give the people something good to read.
I think calling Dave hot threw everybody off. I apologize for that. Dave, how are you?
I'm just used to it.
Okay, great. So how was your Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was great.
Great.
Yours as well?
It was great. Of course, David Stokes is the Director of Municipal Policy at the Show Me Institute. And Dave, I don't know if you were able to listen to the show earlier, but we talked about Better Together. We thought that the state was driven through its heart. It's dead, at least for a few years. And now it seems, according to the Post-Disgrace, it's making a comeback. Please tell me it's not.
Well, as somebody who agreed with parts of Better Together and then watched it implode as it did implode, Tim and I had a lot of good talks about it. Look, St. Louis County and St. Louis City need to do things differently, but the people of both the city and the county made it abundantly clear that what Better Together proposed, which went way too far in the things it was proposing, that there was strong opposition to almost all of that. Mm-hmm. So let's see what the city and the county, because the article had a big headline like Better Together coming back, and then you read in the details, mm-hmm. and it's like they're just considering making reappointments to the Board of Freeholders. So there wasn't a lot of strong evidence of what's happening there. I do think there are ways that the city and the county, and certainly the many cities within St. Louis County, can work better together. Yeah. Required merges and dramatic changes to local government that were sort of a top-down mandate. That's wasn't the way to do it 3-4 years ago. It's not going to be the way to do it next year or the year after. People don't want that. You need a system that encourages voluntary changes, service. I'm a big fan of service sharing. I'm a big fan of the municipalities in our region and the county voluntarily stepping forward and contracting with each other so that like a large city provides the police services to the neighboring small cities. I'm a big fan of things like the North County Police Cooperative, where about 20 or so cities have sort of merged their police departments into one larger organization. Those are the things I want to do a lot more of. And if the city and the county can get the freeholders and come up with, sort of modest but smart and in most cases voluntary changes to city and county government, I think that'd be wonderful. I think they would have learned the lesson that going too far and mandating significant changes, that nobody wants that.
I think Paul pointed out the concerns that many people have is that this is basically will be a wealth transfer from St. Louis County to St. Louis City. Paul, you want to elaborate on that?
Well, when I think of the difference between St. Louis City and St. Louis County, you see a lot more wealth creation in St. Louis County than you do in St. You see people fleeing St. Louis City to get to St. Louis County. And so it looks to me like this is a one-sided relationship where St. Louis City has far more to benefit than St. Louis County does.
Well, back to the Better Together discussion, going back 3 or 4 years, that was stated, something like that was stated a lot. Other people, and you didn't use these terms, so I'm not saying you were saying this, Paul, but other people were saying it'll be a bailout for St. Louis City and concerned about like pension issues and the like. And I always thought that was significantly overstated. Like if St. Louis City rejoined St. Louis County, nobody's talking about, I don't think anybody now would be talking about St. Louis City and the county merging into one. That's never going to happen. But if St. Louis City were to rejoin as just one more municipality in St. Louis County, the county's not going to take over its pension fund. The county doesn't run the pension. Large cities in St. Louis County have their own pension funds. Mm-hmm. And then the smaller ones are in the state fund for local government, loggers. So the county's not going to be required or even want to bail out the city on that issue. As for things like policing and fire, you would hope that some cost savings could be found there. The problem is that, and having covered municipality for a long time, it's always the same thing, that the best policies, you try to merge things, the cost politics always kills the policy. Like you find cost savings by, reducing the number of government employees, service. You find cost savings here and there, and then in the end, the politicians aren't willing to lay anybody off, so there aren't actually any cost savings because they're not willing. The elected officials too often, and I'm not just talking about St. Louis, I'm talking about this is sort of the national evidence for these things, is that because the elected officials don't have the willingness to make the tough choices and actually do what actually needs to be done to get cost savings, you rarely have them.
Well, what about with roads, for example, or maintenance and infrastructure? Who winds up paying for that in St. Louis City if St. Louis City just becomes part of the county? I mean, wouldn't St. Louis County then have to move into St. Louis City and also begin to take care of a lot of their infrastructure needs?
No, actually.
Okay.
In St. Louis County right now, there are a lot of local roads where various cities control their roads. There's a few private subdivision roads. And then St. Louis County in the unincorporated area has their roads. And then there's the arterial road system where St. Louis County manages the major, not the interstate highways, of course, that's under MoDOT, and there's certain state highways as well. But there's a number of major arterial roads. So yes, I would imagine that certain major St. Louis City arterial roads that connect in with county arterial roads, things like, Choteau or Chippewa, major roads that connect in the Forest Park Parkway. Some of those might be added to the county arterial road system in such a scenario, but I wouldn't think that a lot of them would have to be that way.
So it seems like if there's not really a huge benefit or a huge cost, then why do it at all?
Because it's cool.
Why do it at all? It's a very good question, because there is some redundancy in St. Louis City having its own county offices, having a county assessor and a city assessor, a county recorder and a city recorder. So there's some redundancy there. Mm-hmm. There are potential cost savings there. As I said a few minutes ago, there's only cost savings if you're willing to combine the offices and then actually let people go. Mm-hmm. Because you've combined two assessors' offices into one, and now you can let go a quarter of the employees. But if you're not willing to do that, then right now, what is the point?
Yeah.
Same with the sheriff's departments in the two, the court system, and that's a slightly separate thing because judicial circuits are different from city-county boundaries. But that's a good example of it. And you find that in other Nashville and Davidson County, Louisville and that county, Indianapolis and Marion County. I wish I could remember the name of Louisville's county. Some of the cities and counties that have had things like this, that there are successes and there are cost savings, but also another issue is that if in point A the employees in one department make $40,000 and in place B they make $45,000, they always bring everybody up to $45,000, and then if it's reversed in a different department where the first city they make more and in the county they make less, they always bring it up to the city. Like everybody always gets brought up to the highest and best benefits and salary, and the cost savings. That's why the cost savings get substantially less than otherwise they could be. That's one of the reasons.
Dave, Dave, let me get this question. I don't want to turn you into the spokesman for the city-county merger, so I have one more question about that. And it's a political question because I'm a political animal. But one of the criticisms that people have of the city-county merger or bringing St. Louis City into the county as an additional municipality is that if you have that, you will never have a Republican run the St. Louis City or St. Louis County Council again because it will be stacked with Democrats if you bring the city in.
Well, I think that's probably a fact. I mean, that's how it would happen. You would bring in 300,000 heavily.
So why do Republicans want to do that?
Well, I try not to do.
I know you're not partisan.
I try very hard not to do public policy from a partisan outcome. You could have Democrats doing great things, and you can have Republicans doing terrible things. The city of Chesterfield, most of those elected officials they're nonpartisan, but they would, I think, mostly consider themselves Republican. Outside of that, they just passed a terrible TIF with the atrocious public policy with the assistance of Sam Page's appointees on the TIF commission, which is also awful. So look, Republicans can do plenty of bad things in local government too, and we see Tashara Jones pushing back against the firemen's union right now in the city of St. Louis, a good thing that she's doing in the city of St. Louis. Now, we've got plenty of disagreements with what she does as well. So, yes, what you just said politically would be
that's my main reason why I'm against it.
Well, you could adjust that from a political from a structural perspective, you would almost certainly have to expand the county council somewhat, which would not be difficult. It's just a charter vote. So you can adjust that. But would it be a Democrat majority on the council for a long, long time? Of course. And I remember we worked at St. Louis County the last time it had a Republican majority on the council.
Look, if bringing St. Louis City in as a municipality for St. Louis County is the equivalent of making D.C. and Puerto Rico states. They will be 4 permanent Democratic senators.
I'm just going to say that I adamantly support Puerto Rican statehood. I do. First of all, I don't even think I'm going to disagree with you politically.
I allow you to do that.
The delegate, I don't believe it's called a delegate. I believe it's a delegate from D.C. and Virgin Islands, but I believe that the term for the Puerto Rican representative is different. But because I don't remember what that term is, we'll call it a delegate. But I believe it's that person is affiliated with the Republican Party, and I believe they have a history of recent governors and delegates in Puerto Rico who are there's different parties in Puerto Rico, so they were called slightly different names. One is affiliated with the Democrat Party, one with the Republican Party. But you can have that is a two-party system in Puerto Rico.
Okay, well, I will remove Puerto Rico from my analogy, and I will say that St. Louis City entering St. Louis County is the equivalent of giving Washington, D.C. statehood, and there's 2 permanent Democratic senators.
Well, that's probably an accurate comparison. I don't think it automatically means that they shouldn't happen, but it's a fair comparison nonetheless.
Well, we got off the rails today. When did the Missouri Show Me Institute start talking about Puerto Rico statehood?
When you guys started asking me about it on the show.
Dave, anything you want to promote in our final minutes?
Well, we have, we've a lot of other things we wanted to talk about that we can discuss. That's the great part about being a regular weekly guest. We can just kick it to next week. But county budget issues, a campaign pressure to tighten up county pool regulations after a recent tragedy. There's a number of things in the news worth discussing and talking about. And also, but Show Me Institute does have Thursday at the World Chess Hall of Fame. We're bringing in Tony. His last name. I don't have the thing in front of me. We're bringing in Tony from the State Policy Network to talk about his book, The Red versus Blue Divide, and the real dangers to division in America.
And they can find out that person's name on which website?
Tony Woodleaf. Okay. I'm glad it came to me. I had a brain cramp. ShowMeInstitute.org. The event is Thursday. Starts at 5:30. There's cocktails, and it's free. It says $15 on the thing, but now it's free to all if you want to come.
And that was David Stokes, Director of Municipal Policy at the Show Me Institute. David, thank you for putting up with us like you do every day. Every week.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Stell.
And when we come back, we will have Chris's Corner, and Chris's Corner is the theme is hiding in plain sight. So we'll talk about that on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL. Welcome home.
For podcast articles and more, find us on newstalkstl.com. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com. Want to save 50% on new blinds? Blindster offers custom-made blind shades and shutters shipped to you at prices less than big box retailers. Right now, save 50% off any order during Blindster's Cyber Monday sale. Hurry, sale ends December 1st. Blindster.com. Traffic moving again southbound 55 south of 143. Also in Illinois, an accident has all lanes closed on westbound 64 east of the St. Clair-Clinton County line. That has traffic stacked up well east of Albers Road. Stop and go westbound 64 Kings Highway to McCausland. Crowded westbound 64 between Lindbergh and 270, and then heavy pockets westbound 4064, 364 to I-70. Roadwork jams Highway 94 in Defiance. Sounds like we just had an accident reported southbound 270 near Highway 370, and bumper-to-bumper southbound 55 between 44 and Potomac. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic Center.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. First alert weather day this evening, mainly focused east and southeast of downtown. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm in the metro only through about 8 o'clock. Rain's not a guarantee, but any storms will be brief. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm. Otherwise, windy and turning colder overnight, a low down to 29 degrees, a much, much colder day Wednesday. We'll have sunshine, it'll be breezy, but the high just 40 for Wednesday. Thursday, dry, partly cloudy, and 44. That's the latest First Alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
I think they're trying to attack the American people.
Live and local.
Gabe, Mike, Ken, you guys are my morning cup of mental coffee. I love the show. Definitely a convert from the old one.
This is News Talk STL.
Hey folks, Tim Jones here for the best and brand new St. Louis sports bar experience in the entire St. Louis region, Johnny's Hideout in High Ridge, Missouri, located just 10 minutes from 270 and Gravois. 30 TVs, a huge game room, a great outdoor patio, the Sunset Patio, complete with the Sunset Stage and the train station bar, serving the famous Johnny Dow's chicken wings and the best barbecue in town. Open 6 days a week, serving lunch and dinner. Check it all out on the web, jhideout.com. Johnny's Hideout STL on Facebook. That's Johnny's Hideout in High Ridge.
Since 2007, the state of Missouri and local governments have handed out almost $5 billion in tax subsidies or abatements to private developers. That money could have gone to basic services like schools and public safety. And studies show these subsidies don't produce the promised jobs and growth. If developers want to build a sports stadium or shopping mall, why should they be given our tax dollars to do it? It's time to reform economic development subsidies. The Show Me message has been brought to you by Show Me Institute and Show Me Opportunity.
The Vic Borselli Show.
Wednesday at 10:41, we'll have our weekly conversation with St. Louis County Councilman Mark Harder. We'll find out what to expect next year with the County Council.
Weekday mornings at 9
on News Talk STL. This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
And welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show with Paul Kurtman from the Paul Kurtman Show, noon to 1 o'clock every Saturday afternoon, sitting in with us today. And as I alluded to before we went to break, today's Chris's Corner is called Hiding in Plain Sight. And it has to do with this scandal that we're seeing with this Balatsingia, or whatever it is, the children that are being highly sexualized. We're going to talk about that a little bit in Chris's Corner.
Chris.
The whole thing is a joke.
Good God, we gotta do something here, people.
It's not personal. It's strictly business.
My favorite black leader of all time is Frederick Douglass, who asked after emancipation, well, we just freed the blacks, now what are we going to do with them? And his answer was, leave us alone.
And if you don't know, now you know.
And now, Chris's Corner.
You know, one of my all-time favorite television shows was the groundbreaking show Breaking Bad. I was new to the party, Breaking Bad. I had never heard of the show until they started promoting its last season. And out of curiosity, I watched it one night, and I literally stayed up till about 5 o'clock in the morning. I watched about 5 or 6 episodes in a row. What a fantastic show. And I tell you, there was one particular line within Breaking Bad that really stuck with me. And that line was hiding in plain sight. If you remember, Walter White was a high school chemistry teacher, kind of a guy that everybody kind of kicked around, never got a break in life. He is diagnosed with cancer, and he knows that he doesn't have enough money saved for his family, and so because he has a degree and experience in chemistry, he becomes a meth maker, and he becomes one of the top meth makers in the country. And if you look at that, Walter White was hiding in plain sight. Who would have ever known that an ordinary high school, unassuming chemistry teacher was a huge drug dealer? Fast forward a little later in this series, one of his big connections to get him to the next level of the drug business was a gentleman named Gus. I forgot Gus's last name.
Frame.
Gus Frame. But Gus owned a chicken franchise restaurants in New Mexico, and he was the manager, and he was very unassuming. But we later found out that Gus Frame was probably one of the biggest drug dealers in New Mexico, and he's the one that said the line, hiding in plain sight. Another example of hiding in plain sight, a similar show that I liked, was Ozarks. You look at Marty Byrde. Marty Byrde drove a 1980s Cutlass Supreme. He didn't live fabulously or expansively. He just seemed to fit in, and it was just part of the crowd. The reason why I bring all this up and the way that it connects to this scandal, and I don't know how to pronounce the company, but it's a magazine that is been involved in some controversy because their advertisements seem to suggest the sexualization of children. I've seen one of the ads. It has a child holding a whip and some other sexual toy. Of course, they have been widely condemned about this, but think about it. Are these people just hiding in plain sight and telling us who they are? And I'll tell you why I say that. I was listening to a clip from The View, and Sunny Hostin, this was her take on this whole incident. She said that this was bad that Balenciaga did this because there are already people that are against the LGBT community and drag queens and all of that, and the term groomer is thrown around now, and so that is supposed to be disparaging. And she was mad at Balenciaga because doing this magazine hurts the LGBT community and adds to stereotypes. Nothing about, there was less concern about the children being sexualized. And that made me think, you know what? These people are hiding in plain sight. They're not trying to hide who they are, and what they did was so outrageous, sexualizing children, that nobody would ever really think about that there's underlying things dealing with this, which I believe, and I said yesterday, is demonic. I think that these kids wanting to change their sex and their parents agreeing with it and doing it is demonic. I think having drag queens teach kindergartners and preschoolers how to read is demonic. And the fact that these people don't have any discernment at all to see that this is not right, it amazes me. I think it's one of those things where it's so open that it's so out there that you really couldn't believe that this is something that they advocate for. And so, I don't get surprised when I see these things anymore. They're just showing us who they are. In the immortal words of Gus Frame, they are hiding in plain sight. And I would love for us to gather and have more discernment to be able to see these people and stop this exploitation. And that is Chris's Corner. Have you been following this, Paul? This yes. Balenciaga thing? You know what? I have not been following it as closely as I could, not because it doesn't interest me. It's just so disgusting that I don't want to read it and really know all the details.
It is really, really dark. I don't know if you've seen some of these pictures from this photo shoot where it shows these kids and this.
I've seen one picture.
Have you seen this? There's one photo where it shows what looks like yellow and black caution tape, except it says Balenciaga. But when you look at it, Balenciaga, rather than being spelled Balenciaga, it's Baallenciaga.
I heard that. Somebody mentioned that.
You want to talk about hiding in plain sight? Here they are, putting right into their own ads, these ancient Canaanite gods that the ancient Canaanites literally, they would put their live babies onto this altar and roll it down into into this altar, and their babies would burn up while they're alive. And that's what Balenciaga is promoting inside their own ads by spelling their name B-A-A-L, Baal.
And you know that's no accident.
It's
on purpose. And that no one will say anything about that or don't have the discernment to see how dangerous and demonic these people are is just amazing to me. You know, I saw this, I can't remember the group. It was a song that I liked. It came out maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it was from a British artist, and he was half Pakistani and he was half British. That's the only thing that I knew about him, but it was a really good song. And there were so many demonic, dark images within that video. I mean, I just so happened stopped the video in a particular place, and Paul, you could see literally in the background was like this devil, and you could see the horns and stuff, and it did all the things that you see in the music industry. The whole one eye being covered, that's extensive throughout the music industry, is having one. They'll either cover up their eye, or the way that the photography is, that they'll be shaded on one side of their face to show one eye. I've even seen them be kind of more hiding a little bit, where there's an artist called Maxwell, one of his albums. They show him profile so that you just see the one eye. But I have looked up on Google of artists showing their one eye. It's tons of them.
People might be listening to this and they might be saying, oh, this all just sounds too fantastic, almost conspiracy minded. But think about this, folks. No matter what you think about this, most people that I know, whether they're Christians, whether they're atheists, it does not matter. Most people that I know that I've talked to about this are creeped out by things like Ouija boards, right? They're creeped out by things of this dark spiritual nature, things that we don't know much about, but are just really troubling and just overall dark. Yeah. So what you see with these Balenciaga,
sounds good to me. I don't know.
Whatever.
Balenciaga. Yeah.
Balenciaga. What you see with these ads is a outright in your face spiritual darkness, where they're invoking and using in their ads the same imagery. Like you just said, this kind of stuff does not happen by accident, because somebody had to actually order or make this caution tape, and they had to spell Balenciaga, so that way it also has the name Baal in it too. This stuff doesn't happen by accident. So there are dark forces among us, spiritually speaking, and some people really attach themselves to it and try to find a way to get it inside our lives too.
Yeah, and I know we're going to break here, but that's what scares me. And we can talk about this when we come back. That's what scares me about virtual reality. I mean, we'll talk about that. You're listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 1019 94.1 News Talk STL. Welcome home.
We give you news, analysis, opinion, and more. Only on News Talk STL.
If you're on Medicare, listen to this message.
Open enrollment for all Medicare participants is now open until December 7th.
Hi, this is Mike Butts with MB Health Insurance Agency. And regardless if you are new or renewing your health insurance, the process can be confusing and very time-consuming. MB Health is local here in St. Louis, and we will handle your enrollment quickly, properly, and effectively.
Call Mike Butts and his expert team at 314-544-5400.
Or visit mbhealth.com.
Have you been floored? Not until you've gone to Michael's Flooring Outlet. They've been a locally owned and operated family business for more than 28 years. You want variety? Michael's has carpet, hardwood, laminate, ceramic tile, luxury vinyl, natural stone, and many other options. Save money and get quality at Michael's. Plus, your installation will be done right the first time when you hire the experts at Michael's. You can shop in store at one of their 3 convenient locations or shop from home. Check out everything that Michael's has to offer at igotfloored.com.
Republicans in St. Louis City give a big shout out to News Talk STL 101.9 and 94.1 for the incredible value they bring to our city. Hi, this is Mary Teresa McClain, Chair of the Republican Party, City of St. Louis. We are offering a different path forward, a path of common sense values that begin with a return to safety. News Talk STL, thank you for giving us a voice as we lead the way with common sense in the city. Visit stlouisrepublicans.com.
Paid for by St. Louis City Republican PAC. Curtis Farber, Treasurer.
The Rob Carter Show.
And he said, be careful that if you say anything negative about Donald Trump, it could hurt the performance of your show. And I say, let the chips fall where they may. I am going to be truthful. regardless when I get on the airwaves in St. Louis. I was the biggest Trump supporter, stood tall, and stood behind the guy until the pandemic. That's when I went, wait 1 minute.
The Rob Carter Show, Sundays at 5 on News Talk STL. Brought to you by Elite Printing and Packaging. KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefontaine, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting. President Biden met with congressional leaders to discuss his agenda for the remainder of the year. White House correspondent Greg Clugston reports.
The president sat down with Republican and Democratic leaders as the government faces a December 16th shutdown if lawmakers don't agree on funding legislation. He expressed hope that the parties can work together on the funding, including additional money for Ukraine and the COVID-19 response. The president said the economy's at risk because of a looming rail strike, and that he's confident Congress can act to avert it. Greg Clugston, Washington.
But after the meeting, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy attacked the Biden administration for what he called its failures to secure the borders and illegal drug activity.
You've got to lean on President Xi. You've got to stop the cartels. And my expression to the president, too, was it is a different situation now that it's become so bad that we need to have our own military embedded with the border agents to be able to be on a level competing with these cartels and what they have done. The control of our border is lost right now.
China is expanding its nuclear force and is on pace to nearly quadruple the number of warheads it has by 2035, rapidly closing its gap with the United States. Brigadier General Pat Ryder, the Pentagon's press secretary, says the U.S. does not want to see more nuclear weapons in the Asia-Pacific region.
The challenge here is the more proliferation there is, the more concerning it is, the more destabilizing to the region it is.
Christian Pulisic scored while crashing headfirst into the goalkeeper late in the 38th minute, and the United States advanced to the knockout rounds of the World Cup with a 1-0 win over Iran. On Wall Street, a mixed day as the Dow was up by 3 points. The Nasdaq dropped 65. More at townhall.com.
My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance. For your free quote, call SelectQuote at 1-800-940-6161. That's 1-800-940-6161. Or go to SelectQuote.com. That's 1-800-940-6161. SelectQuote. We shop, you save. Full details on example policies at SelectQuote.com/commercials.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com. Want to save 50% off new blinds? Blindster offers custom-made blind shades and shutters shipped to you at prices less than big box retailers. Right now, save 50% off any order during Blindster's Cyber Monday sale. Hurry, sale ends December 1st. Blindster.com. 27 minutes eastbound 270 between McDonald and 5570 in Illinois. Westbound 64 remains closed in Illinois at Albers Road. That's due to a crash before the St. Clair-Clinton County line. Drivers are being diverted to northbound Albers Road and then westbound on Illinois 161. Heavy volume westbound 64 Kings Highway through Hampton. A crash westbound 64 at Chesterfield Parkway West. Crowded westbound 64, 364 to I-70. And an accident, multiple vehicles westbound 70 at Route K. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic Center.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. First alert weather day this evening, mainly focused east and southeast of downtown. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm in the metro only through about 8 o'clock. Rain's not a guarantee, but any storms will be brief. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm. Otherwise, windy and turning colder overnight, a low down to 29 degrees, a much, much colder day Wednesday. We'll have sunshine, it'll be breezy, but the high just 40 for Wednesday. Thursday, dry, partly cloudy, and 44. That's the latest First Alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
Hi, I'm Dr. Alan Link. Your smile is your number one asset.
I was in a car accident. My front tooth cracked. I'm definitely embarrassed to smile. I got mini dental implants. It changed my life.
If you are missing one or more teeth or suffer from loose dentures, mini dental implants might be the solution for you. I have placed mini implants with amazing results. Mini dental implants are less invasive, less painful, and your recovery time is much shorter. Let me give you your self-confidence back and give you the ability to eat the foods that you love to eat, but that you simply can't at this point. Plus, best of all, the cost to you is much less than with older, more traditional dental implants.
It made me feel like me. Like I can smile and feel like Ashley. Just want to say thank you.
We are here to help you at the Dental Link.
Call Dr. Alan Link today at 314-794-6464 to schedule your free consultation. Offices in Baldwin and Melville. That's the Dental Link at 314-794-6464.
Does your current bathroom need to be updated immediately? Introducing One Day Bath and Shower Remodeling, the complete and hassle-free way to get the new bathroom of your dreams in as little as 1 day and for as little as $199 a month. Yes, the experts at One Day Bath and Shower Remodeling will come to you anywhere in the country and show you all the customized options. Now you can have a brand new bathroom in as little as 1 day. Large or small bathrooms, if you want a new bathtub or shower installed, we can do it in as little as 1 day. And if you call right now, you can save $750 off your remodel. We make it easy by offering you financing as low as $199 per month. Call now to schedule your free in-home consultation.
855-672-1566. 855-672-1566. That's 855-672-1566.
Talk radio made in St. Louis for St. Louis. This is News Talk STL.
Our responsibility.
News, analysis, and opinion.
To provide updated guidance.
At 1019, 941, and newstalkstl.com. Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
Be here with the agents. We just spent time with them. Our nation has never been so at risk, and their job has never been harder. Those brave men and women risk their lives every day to protect the American citizens from the consequences of illegal border crossings. Together we bear witness to the worst border crisis in the U.S. history. There has been more than 4 million illegal border crossings since Joe Biden has taken office. That's not the worst part. Now that Title 42 may end, we're bracing for a tsunami. People talk about 18,000 crossings in a day. That would mean 13 million more illegal crossings for the rest of the term of Joe Biden if nothing changes. Think about that. 17 million more illegal entries into our country.
And welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show. It's 5:08, and in the studio with me is Stell on the Wheels of Steel, and of course Paul Kurtman filling in for my partner Tim Jones, who is in Washington D.C. at the annual ALEC conference. Paul Kurtman is host of the Paul Kurtman Show from noon to 1 every single Saturday. Paul, how are you?
I'm doing great.
You know, it's only Tuesday, and I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but do you have guests lined up or anything?
No, not yet. I'll be honest with you. Usually this show comes together hours before we do it because anything can happen.
I know the
all
feeling.
week long, you know?
I know the feeling. You know, Kevin McCarthy there, who is making a lot of tough talk on China and a lot of tough talk on the border. He is in a tough race to try to secure 218 votes to be the next Speaker of the House. Stell, is he doing it for you? Is this working?
No, not really.
Not really? No.
Although I do appreciate the fact that he seems to have grown a little bit of a backbone here over the last couple of weeks, and I'm all for that. I'm just skeptical as to whether this is for real or is he just putting on a show? Because, as you said, you know, it's almost like it's it's like a job. What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, it's like a job interview kind of thing, and I'm hesitant to get back on board with him, to be honest.
You know, we've been hearing for months about all of the illegal migrants that are heading north from Central and South America. You know, occasionally when the media wants to do their job, they do talk about other immigrants, illegal migrants that are entering the southern border. We hear reports all the time of prayer rugs and Qurans being found in the desert. If you remember a while ago, Haitians were making their way through the southern border. Well, New York Times, guys, has a story out that says, guess who else are making their way to the southern border? They are anti-war Russian activists who do not want to serve in the war with Ukraine. Paul, somehow they are finding their way to America and they are crossing into the border. But to the administration's credit, they are stopping them and they're not allowing them to enter the country. You know, one of the activists said here in this report that I left oppression and now I'm coming to oppression, which, like, dude, you're not going to get a lot of sympathy here talking about America is oppressive.
You know what, though? I'm just saying from the position of a tactician, which at one time is being with the Marine Corps for several years. If I was Putin, I'd be like, here's an opportunity to get a bunch of Russians in the U.S., send them over there as refugees. That would be a good way to get them in there, get them welcome, get them close to these institutions of government or maybe some influencers or whoever else. Because, I mean, how in the world does a Russian, well, I mean, of all places to go, right? Yeah. Why would you want to come to America? Why wouldn't you just want to stick around one of these countries close to Russia where a lot of people still speak Russian, but at least you're still out of Russia? I mean, all the way to the U.S., I'm sure some people would want to do it. Hey, I might want to do it. But I'm just saying, certainly also looks like an opportunity to get some people. Isn't this not why Russia wanted the UN headquarters in New York?
Yeah. I have to admit, Paul, that when I first saw this story, you know, of course your heart goes out that these people are fleeing a war zone and wow, they go through all of this trouble to get to America. But my second thought was, are these potential spies that Vladimir is sending over to our country?
The Russians aren't stupid. And I remember one of the big reasons why a lot of people were so eager to have the UN headquarters in New York City, because then our opponents during the Cold War could legally get their people to the U.S. Other people who have an interest in spying on the U.S. could get their people to the U.S. So anyway, not to say that this is actually what's happening. However, I think we should be stopping these people and anybody else who's trying to cross the border illegally for the same reason.
Now, I'm playing completely devil's advocate here. This is not my position. But can you make an argument that, you know, all these other people are coming into the country illegally and we're giving them green cards and we have special programs? Can this be a propaganda coup for the United States to allow these people in that are fleeing Putin? And, you know, you're not a democratic country. They want to come to America. They want to be free. Look at all the perils that they had to go through to get here. Could this be a propaganda coup for the United States and we should let them in?
Well, I'm going to give you a different perspective. China's been doing it for years in our universities.
Yeah.
And I can't
Birth
tell you.
tourism, too.
I've gone to 3 different Big Ten universities over the last 20 years. The last one was U of I, Champaign-Urbana. And I was amazed to see how many students were there from the Far East.
Yeah.
And it totally overwhelmed me. We were on campus for an entire Saturday with our niece playing volleyball there from Louisville. Louisville was playing University of Illinois. We had time to go around campus. I was amazed to see just an overflow of students from the Far East. And then you look at, and Paul, you brought this up, and I'm going to make the comment here that China contributed over $70 million to the Biden Center in Pennsylvania, also contributed multi-millions to the University of Delaware for their Biden Center, and Delaware will not say where that money came from and how much was contributed, but it's common knowledge in Delaware that the money came from China. So the infiltration's there, and as you said,
they got their spies sleeping with congressmen.
Bang.
Yep.
You know, they call this, and you're right, Stel, they have been doing this for years where they've been setting up these think tanks on our college universities, and they call them, quote-unquote, Confucius centers, or what they're calling them. And you're right, too, Stel. I read this in the Wall Street Journal a few years ago, that wealthier Chinese are engaging in birth tourism. That when the woman is 7 or 8, 9 months pregnant, there are companies over in China that set up tours where you can come to the United States. Here's the hospital that you will be staying in so that you give birth to an American citizen and then you fly back home. That has been a big industry.
You're right about that. Yes.
Wow.
You didn't know? Did you?
I'm
you didn't
seeing
know that?
dollar signs right now. that it probably is a huge industry.
Yeah, and China has 1.5 billion people. They have a lot of people, and the vast majority of them are poor, don't have a lot of means. But China has a very wealthy upper class. You see the pictures over there, and they're driving Mercedes and BMWs and shopping at Tiffany's. And
are we like the only country that does that too? Hey, if you're born here, you immediately get citizenship.
I think so. I think we are the only country that does that.
I feel like we should pay attention to wait. Why is nobody else doing this? Because it seems like that would be a really good way to just get whoever you wanted legal access.
Yeah, I think that rule, birthright citizenship, I think that was based on an honor system that we don't have anymore, and I think there should be some type of regulations on it. You just can't, you
can't just sneak over, have a kid, and now, bam, or an American citizen.
Or even plan it. Like I said, these Chinese, they plan vacations. They call it literally birth tourism.
Yeah,
and they come here and have kids. One other thing, too, we talked about Haiti, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Paul. The United States is, because the economic situation in Haiti is so bad, the United States is worried that Haitians may flee in boats and other floating things to get here to the United States. The Biden administration wants to put together a multinational force to stop these people from coming to the United States, but there won't be any United States soldiers in this multinational force stopping people from coming to the United States. He wants other nations to be involved in that. What's your thoughts?
I don't know how he's going to convince other people to do it. First off, the second thing is I listen. If you don't want people coming in and you want to stop it and you want to put together some kind of force. Is this not what we have been advocating for a long time? Build the wall.
Yeah.
Equip our border patrol with the resources that they need to do the job instead of, blaming them or using them as a scapegoat or as a political tool, to advocate open borders or whatever the case may be.
Paul, do you think it's a duplicitous policy that if Haitians fleeing their part of the island for economic reasons, but Cubans, if they're fleeing oppression, that if the Cubans, if they can make it to United States waters or shores, they are granted asylum, but Haitians are sent back because they are economic migrants instead of political dissidents? Should we change that?
That's a good question. I I completely understand the idea of being a refuge for people who are fleeing oppression. And I don't just mean, we don't like our country because economic mobility is hard to find. I'm talking about oppression where you literally don't have the ability to worship. It's oppression like they remove you from your parents and there is no family unit like we see in North Korea. I am totally fine with America being a safe haven for people that need to find their freedom. But if somebody doesn't like their economic situation, what I don't like is, well, then just go to America. Because what that's going to do for people around the world is it's going to completely undermine the principles of self-preservation or the principles of them wanting to find that, that come into play when somebody needs to find their own economic mobility. And that can actually make the situation worse in places like Haiti when the best and the brightest can't find a way up higher, so they just leave. It's not going to do anything in the long run, I don't think, for Haiti.
And that's what happened. I mean, you have to feel so sorry for Haiti. I mean, that country has been a backwards third world country since it gained independence, and it really hasn't ever really improved. And what happens in so many of these despot countries, they end up getting these leaders to rob and pillage the country while the rest of the people suffer. And the people deserve better than that. It saddens me as a person of African descent to see people so close to the United States, which is the most powerful, prosperous country in the world, having to live in absolute squalor. It saddens me.
We make it worse, too. I think it was John Quincy Adams that said that we should be a light, for the world to see, like, this is how you do things, give the people freedom. But what we do these days, what we've been doing now for probably the greater part of a century at this point, is we'll find people that need help, and we'll just walk right in with everything they need, whether it's foreign aid that comes in the form of money or if it comes in the form of food. And who do we give it to? We give it to whoever's in charge. Yeah. And probably by us doing it that way, we've also created more warlords or funded more authoritarians or bad guys because then they just take it and they use it against their own people. I mean, even the way that we look at our humanitarian efforts around the world in many cases maybe helps a little bit, but with all the resources that we're offering, if we could just be a little bit better stewards of how we administer that, we could probably do a lot more good for the people that are there.
Because a lot of people misunderstand when they see the famines in Ethiopia and other parts of Africa. They think it's global warming, the soil's bad, they didn't get enough rain, which is part of it, but most of it, it's just pure corruption. I mean, they get enough aid to be able to feed these folks, but they steal it and they sell it on the black market to others, and they're
not just passing out bags of rice. Like if we show up on the shores of Somalia, if the Marines show up like they did in the early 90s with all this food, that just wound up in the hands of the people that had the guns. Exactly. And then they used that and basically extorted or otherwise bribed their way into more power while everybody else continued to starve. So we just got to do better about it.
You don't think any of that's going on in the Ukraine, do you?
There's probably a few dollars that have grabbed some legs.
Not only am I skeptical about where all that stuff is going, but I don't know if you recall a couple of months ago a plane crashed in Greece that had that was filled with military hardware from Ukraine. I'm not sure where it was headed, but I remember it crashed in Greece. And it just kind of floated off the news pages. Hardly anybody covered it. And my suspicion, maybe because I'm Greek, was that something's fishy here. What's the deal with all of this military hardware being flown somewhere else, and the plane happened to crash in Greece? So yeah, I'm wondering, Paul, like you said, where's this stuff going? I'm not sure.
Well, let's talk about this when we come back. 314-912-1019. I'd be curious to know, Stell, and I ask you the question first off, does it make a difference if a little of the money is siphoned off as Russia is winning, or if Ukraine is winning and they are keeping their freedom? Does it matter the little money got siphoned off?
You want me to answer that after the break?
When we come back. All right. 314-912-1019. I want to hear from you on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL.
And all heads turned 'cause she was the queen.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. First alert weather day this evening, mainly focused east and southeast of downtown. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm in the metro only through about 8 o'clock. Rain's not a guarantee, but any storms will be brief. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm. Otherwise, windy and turning colder overnight, a low down to 29 degrees, a much, much colder day Wednesday. We'll have sunshine, it'll be breezy, but the high just 40 for Wednesday. Thursday, dry, partly cloudy, and 44. That's the latest First Alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Enter the Craftsman Days Ultimate Garage Sweepstakes, sponsored by Lowe's, for a chance to win Craftsman products valued over $10,000. No purchase necessary, ends 12/31, 18 or older, and have a Lowe's.com account. Void where prohibited. See rules at Lowe'sUltimateGarage.com for entry instruction, odds, and prizes. Sponsored by Lowe's. A crash on the right shoulder, westbound 70 at Route K. Heavy westbound 64 either side of Hampton. Accident cleared westbound 64 at Chesterfield Parkway West, and then stop and go westbound 4064 between 364 and I-70. Southbound 270 slow between Page and Olive, and again between 64 and Manchester. Expect construction delays southbound 55, 44 most of the way to Carondelet, and accident cleared in Illinois. All lanes reopened westbound 64 between the St. Clair-Clinton County line. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic
Colombo
Center.
here for Eggers Heating and Air Conditioning. Christine and I trust our home with Eggers because at Eggers, customer satisfaction is the #1 priority. And as you know, St. Louis winters are too cold and unpredictable to not be prepared for. So if your furnace isn't keeping your family warm and comfortable, don't wait and risk the problem getting worse. Whether it's time for repairs or replacement, Eggers has you covered with the clarity and attention to detail your home deserves. Contact Eggers now at 636-242-6515 or at callaggers.com.
For $1 a day, if any covered appliance breaks in your home, we guarantee replace it. All makes and models, washers, dryers, refrigerators, air conditioners, and more. Guaranteed to be fixed or replaced for $1 a day. Call the Home Service Club now for free information.
800-399-3701. 800-399-3701. 800-399-3701. That's 800-399-3701.
What if the music stopped? If the familiar voices were silenced? If there were no breaking news updates? What if your companion and connection to your community came with a monthly fee? Don't worry, we're free local radio with you wherever you go, celebrating 100 years and looking forward to the next 100. We are broadcasters. Text radio to 52886 and let Congress know you depend on your local TV and radio stations. This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Hey, it's Katie, reminding you to subscribe to our show podcast so you never miss anything that happens here at News Talk STL. Get our podcasts every day on the show pages at newstalkstl.com, or just subscribe to your favorite shows on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, or anywhere else you get your podcasts.
This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. We give you news, analysis, opinion, and more. Only on News Talk STL.
And welcome back to Motown Tuesday, I guess, on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show. Did we extend Motown for an additional day?
Well, Rare Earth was one of the only white bands on that label.
Yeah,
they might have been
I
the
didn't know
only.
that.
Yeah, they were, I believe, the only white band on Motown's label.
Because I didn't know that they were the original ones of the song. I forgot. It was one of the black groups, Motown black groups did this, and I thought that they were the original ones.
Yeah, Temptations or one of the either Temptations or one of the other bands. Yes,
all those groups were about all the same, though. It seemed like. Welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show. As I said, Paul Kurtman, who is standing in for Tim Jones, who will be back on Thursday. I don't know. Were we talking about this on air during the break about the government waste?
We were talking about it during the break, but I want to hear about this story. I have not heard about this.
Yes, well, we were talking about government waste, and we were talking about it nationally. And I said, well, there's a local story that was in the Post-Dispatch, I think yesterday or over the weekend, about this woman who ran a nonprofit that helped feed people during COVID. During the height of COVID, she had 32 distribution sites, was really doing a good job feeding the people. And then an audit came out, and come to find out that she was skimming some of the money, Paul. I think in 2020 or 2021, I think she got reimbursed from the government $20 million for helping to feed people. One of the discrepancies that they found in the report, she sent in a reimbursement. She had receipts for milk for a particular month, and I think it was 4,000 gallons. But she ended up sending in a reimbursement for 14,000 gallons worth of milk that she claimed that she bought. Some of the largesse, you guys remember the old Circuit City that was there at 270 and the St. Charles Rock Road? This nonprofit bought that to be their headquarters. And they also had in the story that this nonprofit also bought a $975,000 home in St. Charles for the founder of the nonprofit. And still, she justified this because they have staff meetings and retreats at that home. So that's why I justified it.
I totally understand.
Her name is Connie Bobo.
Connie Bobo.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you read the article, all throughout the article, she's like, my accounting standards may not have been the best, and I was a little lax on the paperwork, but I fed people, and we did a good job. We fed people, but and I think it's very interesting. We all know who Scott Rosenblum is, right? The noted local lawyer. In the story, Mr. Rosenblum contacted the newspaper to say that she was in the process of retaining him. So I think she's in a little trouble.
He always gets the best cases.
Well, and the thing is, and I'm not trying to dog him out or anything, but a lot of people, they talk about his success. But I've heard people say, yeah, he's just going to plead you out. He's not like getting you off of the cases. He's giving you a plea. So I don't know. But, this kind of harkens back to Chris's corner. Hiding in plain sight. Be chill. You can't own a nonprofit and then all of a sudden you're buying a $3 million building and you're buying $1 million house. Be chill.
In this article, she had this nonprofit since 2011. That's when she started it. And I think in 2019, she claimed she was able to be reimbursed by, I think, $250,000. But she paid herself a $60,000 salary. So
which is modest, I guess.
Which is modest. Yeah. I mean, you're getting a pretty good size amount of the money even then, right?
Look, you get a $60,000 salary, but you get $1 million house. So it's right. It's a nice payoff, or even Steven in a sense.
Well, okay, so she paid herself about a quarter of the money that she was reimbursed in 2019.
Oh, okay.
But then when COVID hit, she said that she was going to be distributing 1,000 meals a day. That's what she said she was going to be distributing. Right. But she billed the government for 2,500 meals a day. So you're not just a little off on your accounting there.
And that's just one example. I mean, with COVID and PPP and just the money that was being thrown around, it was just ridiculous. And I guess for some people, it was just, remember what happened in the county with the guy that was with the jail. He's trying to get COVID money for businesses. We see what happened in the city with COVID money. I mean, COVID was just a giant slush fund.
It was. And the thing is we don't even, what we're talking about right now is like less than a fraction of a percent of all the money that was just slung out all across the country. So you know that there's people out there who've just done a much better job of getting it and hiding it, probably putting it in one nonprofit and then funneling it over to another one and paying themselves salaries out of who knows what they're doing. But there's been so much money that's been given out. And it's going to people who are criminals.
And those are the smart people that do what you said. I mean, the stupid people go and buy $975,000 houses. They buy $2 million buildings. I remember other instances with PPP where people got loans and the guy bought Lamborghinis and property and stuff. It's like, how can you not think you're going to get caught? Is what amazes me.
Well, the reason is because they're getting it from the government. And if it was my money that somebody was stealing, you better believe I would be like accounting for every penny. But the government, it's not their money. They just create money. During the break, one of the things I was telling you guys about was I like to watch American Greed sometimes, which is this show on CNBC about con artists, right? And there was this one episode that I remember watching several years ago. These two little old ladies had a hardware store, and every now and then they got a government contract, and so they'd make about a couple $1,000s sending nuts and bolts from their hardware store to the government. But one month, they put the decimal point in the wrong place, total accident, and the government sent them like $100,000. And they were like, oh my goodness, this is a mistake. But they didn't say anything.
No, of course.
They figured that at some point somebody in the government would realize, oh my goodness, there's $100,000 missing. Right? We're spending hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars. Nobody's looking for $100,000. So after a few months, they were just like, let's just accidentally put the decimal plate. In the end, they wound up conning the government out of tens of millions of dollars. These two little old ladies.
Oh my.
And the thing is nobody ever caught them until I think like one person in a government office somewhere, like an intern, was actually doing the work they were supposed to be doing because they were an intern, right? And they got caught.
Well, you know, a couple of Friday nights ago, a couple of weeks ago on a Friday night, on Pocket Watching with JT, his subject was trying to deal with those loans and folks who were in jail getting the PPP loans. And there was a major story in the Chicago area at the Joliet Penitentiary. Did I pronounce it correctly? Penitentiary. Where a lady in jail was getting money.
I've heard stories like
that. And there was one in Franklin County.
Really?
I believe. Yes. Maybe a month or two ago. And JT was going through all the details, and it was hard to fathom that this was actually going on. But, Paul, like you said, the government just creates the money, and it flies out of there. Speaking of flying, I looked up the plane crash in Greece. It was in July. A Ukrainian cargo plane crashed in Greece carrying 11 tons of weapons, including mortar shells and landmines destined for Bangladesh. All the crew members were confirmed dead. The story just kind of disappeared.
Yeah, I'd never heard it. It's the first I've heard of it.
And you wonder how many other flights are going to other countries from Ukraine with military equipment.
Right. Paul, you always hear from politicians, especially when they're running for office, that they're going to cut taxes. They're also going to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. Is that ever really possible to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse to the point where it's meaningful, or is that just empty campaign slogan?
90% of it's empty campaign slogan talk. There are a few people that you'll run into who are really into that. When I was there, I was really into that. I kind of got my rise in the Tea Party. And I began to lose some of those people that were supporting me because they wanted me to hit like the Tea Party stuff or, you know, always be about guns or always be about the pro-life issue. But for me, it's the financial stuff. I was looking a lot at contracts and procurement. And there's so much waste, fraud, and abuse.
Give us an example of some stuff you eliminated.
Some stuff. Oh, you want? Wait a minute. You want examples of waste, fraud, and abuse?
Okay,
here's an example of waste, fraud, and abuse. So the Department of Transportation. Let's just remember that we just raised our gasoline taxes because MoDOT needs more money, right?
Of course.
So Tom Schweik, probably arguably the best state auditor that this state has ever had.
No doubt.
Tom Schweik. He was a friend of mine in the legislature. I did a lot of work for him on some of the issues that he was bringing to the surface from these audits. He did an audit on MoDOT, and we discovered that MoDOT has something called Employee Relocation Assistance Program, which makes sense because we have to hire engineers. And if you're an engineer for the state government, you're not going to make as much money as if you're an engineer for the private sector.
Right.
So we will have perks, and I'm totally fine with that. Well, we had one employee who did not qualify for relocation assistance, but we gave them relocation assistance anyway because they weren't one of these people.
Right.
We just gave them relocation assistance anyway. But part of the relocation assistance that we gave them, which is already wasteful or if not fraudulent, this same employee owned 2 homes. Have you heard this?
No, I haven't.
This happened in Missouri, folks.
I didn't.
This MoDOT employee owned 2 homes. And so when they relocated, they decided to sell one of their homes. But when they sold their home, they sold it at a loss. And to make them feel better about having sold their second home at a loss, MoDOT cut them a taxpayer-funded check to make up the difference on the sale of their second home. There's one example right there, but there's a lot of other examples.
I want to know
too.
first of all, Paul, you were in the government. I want to know first of all, how in the heck is a MoDOT employee having 2 cribs?
That's a good question. How does a MoDOT employee afford to have? I mean, Missouri has notoriously paid our state employees less than other states have been paying their employees.
Something about that's not sounding
and
right.
if we got one state employee who has 2 houses, there's some questions that might need to be
I think
asked.
there's some waste, fraud, and abuse somewhere in there, probably.
Yeah,
Wow.
but Chris, to answer your question, there's a few people that are really into that. I got to the point where I wanted to introduce a bill, and I did introduce a bill, and it passed the House, that would force the legislature to actually read the state auditor's audits. Before we cut these departments and agencies another check, let's just read their most recent audit to make sure they got out ahead of the problems that the auditor discovered in the audits. That makes sense. Couldn't even get it past the legislature.
Is there anybody, and I don't want you to put anybody on the spot or not on the spot, is there anybody in the legislature now that is fulfilling that role of watchdog like you were?
I'm sure there's a couple people. I have not been on top of that like I was when I was in the legislature because I'm growing a business and raising a family with lots of kids. And
speaking of that, congratulations! I
Thank
saw on
you.
Facebook. What's this number?
Number
12,
5.
13?
Number 5.
Number 5. Okay.
Coming up in March, but I think that there are some people in the legislature who are into that, but you have to get leadership to buy in because your bill doesn't go anywhere unless the Speaker of the House and the Senate leadership is also for it. Like, you got to get people to buy into it, and that is what is so remarkably disheartening because the people that could just move a bill forward. Yeah. It doesn't hurt them at all to move an accountability bill forward, but they just don't do it.
And then we're going to go to break. What's the budget? It was $42 billion, I think.
I thought it was closer to 47.
Was it $47 billion? And I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, but how much of that would you say is just abuse or fraud, or we could eliminate out of that budget and could still run the government efficiently?
So probably, I think in 2014, I did a 9-city, 3-day tour. My committee, the Committee on Government Efficiency, Committee on Downsizing State Government, did a tour, and we went around the whole state to listen to people. We just wanted to hear people complain about government. And the complaints that were coming in helped us find so many redundancies. And I put together a policy book that had a couple $100 million worth of savings where we could actually cut costs without cutting corners. Here's a good one. Did you know that if you go to the Capitol building in Jefferson City, the lights are always on, the escalators are always running? It could be the middle of the summer, in the middle of the night on a weekend. Nobody's there, but the lights are on, and the escalators are already running. And it's that way in many of our government buildings. There's so many different things that we could be doing just to save money, but we're just not doing it.
And you are done with political office, right?
I'm done.
All right. Maybe we'll try to convince him when we come back on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show. Don't go away. We want to hear your calls, too. 314-912-1019. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
For podcast articles and more, find us on newstalkstl.com. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center,
This report is sponsored by Mucinex DM. Not all coughs are the same. Buy Mucinex DM to get cough and chest congestion relief for 3 times longer than your typical cough and chest congestion medicines. With Mucinex DM, it's not cold and flu season, it's comeback season. Relief with Mucinex DM and nothing lasts longer. Among OTC cough and cold medicines, use as directed. Accident on the right shoulder, westbound 70 at Route K. Watch for those brake lights at Highway 79. Westbound 64, slow between Kings Highway and Bellevue. Crowded westbound 4064 from 364 to I-70. Volume eastbound 64 between Brentwood and Big Bend. Heavy southbound 170 from Ladue to 64. Southbound 270, you're slow from Page to Doherty Ferry. Southbound 55 lines up between 44 and Bates. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic Center.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. First alert weather day this evening, mainly focused east and southeast of downtown. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm in the metro only through about 8 o'clock. Rain's not a guarantee, but any storms will be brief. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm. Otherwise, windy and turning colder overnight, a low down to 29 degrees, a much, much colder day Wednesday. We'll have sunshine. It'll be breezy, but the high just 40 for Wednesday. Thursday, dry, partly cloudy, and 44. That's the latest first alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
St. Louis's place to talk.
Because that's where the votes are getting stolen. When you get into the facts and logic and reason thing, it drives me crazy because you're right.
I call it the oh my God virus.
News Talk STL. News, analysis, opinion.
Is your portfolio prepared for the biggest risks facing investors today? Hi, it's Tim Jones. High inflation and a rapidly changing economy may impact your investments. If you haven't made appropriate changes, your portfolio may not be positioned to address some of the biggest risks in today's economy. That means it's time to request your free portfolio review from the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel. You can hear their latest views on the markets and investing during On the Money, hosted by Stifel financial advisors Bob Stockdale and Eric Robert, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on News Talk STL 101.9. They can help you get organized, guide you through critical retirement decisions, and create a portfolio designed around your needs. To schedule your free portfolio review, go to clearpathinvesting.com. That's clearpathinvesting.com, or call 636-695-2650. That's clearpathinvesting.com, 636-695-2650. Stifel Nicholas & Company, Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
Packages start at $29.99 a month with signed agreement. Restrictions apply. Speak to a representative for complete offer details. See Vivint.com for license details. Terms and conditions apply.
Homeowners, if you're looking for the best in home security and smart home technology at a price you can actually afford, we have great news. Now you can get Vivint's award-winning home security systems starting at about $1 a day. U.S. News and World Report has recognized Vivint as the best professionally installed home security system of 2022. And right now, you can get Vivint's home security technology for about $1 a day. Plus, get free professional installation from a licensed technician. Protect your home and loved ones for as low as $1 a day. Call right now for your free home security consultation.
800-561-3405. 800-561-3405. 800-561-3405. That's 800-561-3405.
Mike Ferguson in the morning.
We know the left wants to write the rules for policy and politics, but on Wednesday's show, we're going to talk about the question, does the left want to write the rules for your family?
Morning starting at 5:30 on News Talk STL. This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
Heart is a blue, shoots up through the stony ground.
Like and subscribe to us on Rumble. News Talk STL.
No space to rent.
And welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show, 5:47 on this Tuesday, November 28th. Is that correct, Stowe? Is it 28th?
Today's the 29th.
I knew it. I'm always either a day early or a day behind. I can't ever get it right. And Paul Kurtman from the Paul Kurtman Show is sitting in for my partner, Tim Jones, who will be back on Thursday. And on the line, we have Scotty, who wants to talk about birthright citizenship. Scotty, how are you?
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Or evening, I guess now.
Yeah.
So, just to reiterate what you were talking about, birthright citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
I was stationed in Bahrain back in from 2000 2002, and my wife at the time was pregnant with our second son. A shipmate of mine had their child born in Bahrain 4 months prior to my son was born, and they had to go through hell to get that child a U.S. birth certificate. So I flew my wife back to Texas, and so our son could be born in America. But yeah, so if your child is born overseas, especially in the Middle East, you have to go through hell just to get that child a U.S. birth certificate.
That's unfortunate. So were you serving? You were serving overseas?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then thank you for your service, Scotty.
Oh,
Hey, Scotty,
Yeah, go ahead.
were you in Bahrain in October, November, and December of 2002?
Yes, I was.
All right, yeah, I was there too. We might have crossed paths, maybe even ate at the same chow hall. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I was stationed on a mine sweep back then, the USS Ardent.
Okay.
Excellent. Scotty?
Yeah, I was there for
go ahead.
from 2000 to 2002.
Scotty, where are you calling from, by the way?
The God's Country in Lake Wapapella.
Well, I thought you're the Scotty, our favorite Scotty. I thought it was you. I said during the break, I said it may be Scotty who comments, but I'm not for sure. Good to talk. I think this is the first time that I've ever talked to you.
No, I think the second time.
Okay.
I called once after the Texas shooting.
Excellent. Scotty, we really appreciate your support and listening, my friend. Really
All right,
do.
Appreciate you all, and God bless you all, and you have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scotty.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Bye.
Yeah, Scotty has been with us since the very get-go. Beginning of the show, big supporter of all the shows, and he's what helps keeps us on the air.
Yes, indeed.
You know what? Merriam-Webster or Merriam Dictionary has their name or word of the year. Thank you, Stel.
Yeah.
Did you hear about this? You know what it is?
I do know what it is, but I don't want to spoil it for you because Kathy, my wife, gave me a list of what the words were, and that was I know what the word is at the top of the list, but go ahead.
I'm really surprised because I would have thought this would have been the word of the year maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but
starts with a G.
Yes, and it is gaslighting, which is a, quote, a deliberate conspiracy to mislead, according to Miriam. You know where I first heard the term gaslighting? Was on an old Lucille Ball episode. Not the one with Desi, the one afterward when she was divorced and her name was McGillicuddy. Remember that one? And that was an old episode, and she brought up gaslighting, where where the premise of the movie was to make somebody crazy and all that. But that's the first time I had ever heard of that term, and that was when I was a little boy talking about gaslighting. Still, you took the energy out of my thing.
I'm
there.
sorry. I should have said I didn't know anything about it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about the
ask Paul.
Paul. Yeah. Paul. Merriam-Webster. They also named 8 top lookups for 2022. There are 8 top lookups. Can you guess one of them or a couple of them? Think of that. What do you think the top lookups were this year?
Oh man, incel.
Just think Let me see.
That one?
Nope.
Oh, man. That's a new one. That's a new one.
Just think politics and topics and headlines.
Transgender?
LGBTQIA.
Okay.
That's in there. What was the name of the COVID virus? Omicron is one.
Omicron? Okay.
Here's one that kind of surprises me because you didn't hear this a lot, I don't think. Oligarch? I guess during the Russian thing, people looked that up. This was probably during the gay marriage debate. Codify was a word that people looked up.
People had to look up the word codify.
Codify, yeah. Well, here and
I wonder how many people thought it was a fish.
They probably did. Oh, I have that codify over there.
Because I thought gaslighting was Gaslight Square. So okay.
Another word that was a big lookup was sentient. Which surprised me.
Like a sentient being, a self-aware being.
I'm trying to think of what happened in the world, what happened in news that people were looked up sentient. Now, I'm gonna show my ignorance here because one of these words I've never heard of it. I don't know what it means. Loamy, Loamy. Paul, you're a genius. What does loamy mean?
Loamy means.
You ever heard of loamy, Stell?
No, I have not.
I don't know what it means. I just looked it up on my computer, and I can't even find a good website that has what it means.
Loamy.
Loamy?
Loamy.
Oh. Denoting or relating to a fertile soil of clay and sand containing humus. Hummus.
Now, what happened during the year where people were looking up something about sand, humus soil?
Loamy?
Loamy.
Can't imagine.
I bet people are referring to. I bet people are using the word loamy not so much in the context of soil and sand as they are using it to describe other people.
Yeah, you're loamy. I can.
I don't know. That doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
I think sentient beings would be because so many folks were laying around during the 2 years of the COVID issue.
We were being,
or maybe sentient. it was AI. Maybe it was AI. All this talk about AI. Or all the UFOs that have come out in the news with the Navy. Maybe people are like, "Oh, there's sentient beings out there."
I hate we only have a couple of minutes in this segment, but you brought up something that I read a couple of days ago. Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State, Nobel Peace Prize winner, he said one of the biggest dangers that he is worried about in the coming years is artificial intelligence being applied in military usage, which I found that very, very interesting. That giving missiles and things their own. Hey, you go ahead and do this. Well, I'm saying you don't have someone actually directing. The artificial intelligence is making the decisions. I guess he's worried about a Odyssey 2000 HAL situation where HAL takes over the ship.
Yeah, that would be really weird. I can see it being in the sense of if every different country has their own artificial intelligence that immediately responds to other things happening, because then we could really see a domino effect happen real fast, right? Yeah. Like when the stock market crashed in 1987, it was all computer generated.
Right.
Just one after the other. They were all like taking signals from other computers. I could see something like that.
I've never seen the movie, but have you heard about Hal from Odyssey 2000?
Yes.
That Hal took over the ship?
Yes.
What does he say, Stell? He's like, they're like telling him, it's like, Hal, what are you doing? What are you doing? He's like, I'm taking over. Just his voice is just so calm. It's like, I'm taking over the ship now.
That's kind of creepy.
What was Odyssey 2000? What was it about, Stell?
I honestly don't remember.
Do you?
No.
I remember hearing the movie, but I had never watched it.
1968?
Yeah. I was 2 years old when I was alive.
I was in high school.
2001: A Space Odyssey is a 1968 film.
And just think, back then in 1968, 2001 was like so far away. I remember when I was in high school in early 1980s, 1982, and when 1999 by Prince came out. And it was like, of course, it was a jam. It was a hit, but you couldn't even fathom like 1999. That is so far off in the distance.
It's 2022 right now.
Yeah.
And like it seems like just yesterday it was 1999.
Yeah.
And we were wondering what's the world going to be like in 22 years.
I was talking about that. It was like, man, it's hard to believe we're like 22 years into 2000. Seemed like yesterday we were wondering, was the world going to collapse?
And Y2K.
Because they couldn't.
That's right.
Couldn't tell. Does that have to be one of the all-time busts of all time? Seriously.
I was at an afterglow at my church.
Oh, were you?
Yep. And I thought it'd be really funny to turn the lights out.
Ah.
And it was pretty good. And then I was like, well, what if they don't come back on? I didn't realize the predicament I had put myself in. Fortunately, they came back on, obviously.
How worried were you guys? Were you worried that the computers were going to shut, the world was going to shut down?
Because the radio station I was at, all the engineers were there, and they were concerned about what was going to happen, and we made it through it okay. But, I was a bit concerned, yes.
Don't go away. When we come back, we will talk with David Stokes from the Show Me Institute. You're listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL. Welcome home.
Thanks for being with us, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Yep.
Are you the type of person who loves their community and wants it to be the best it can be? Now it's easier than ever to do your part. Go to recyclemo.com to see just how easy it is to recycle the right way. Or if you already recycle and want to be as efficient as possible, recyclemo.com can tell you what should and should not be recycled in your area. Become part of the clean recycling movement today. It's the right thing to do. Sponsored by the Missouri Department of Natural Resources.
Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Chris Dorr from the American Firearms Association. Chris, Democrats notoriously do not want to answer the question, what is an assault weapon?
You know, the AR-15 that they want to ban. When you hear assault weapons ban being used by the radical left, just think firearms ban. They want to get rid of all of them. They use terms that they're not, that they don't bother to define along the way just to try to score points.
Weekday mornings, 5:30 to 9 on News Talk STL.
Hey, folks, here's great news for active aging seniors. The Kanega Watch, the only medical alert smartwatch with built-in fall detection. Yeah, the Kanega Watch is much different than the other guys. It's a stylish, discreet watch you can wear all the time. Get help through the watch in one of three ways. Your voice, pushing the watch's alert button, or have the fall detection connect you to a U.S.-based 24/7 monitoring center who'll speak to you through your watch and can send help to your GPS location nationwide. And get this, it can do that even if you're not responsive. This is true 24/7 peace of mind for you and those that love you. Order your Kanega Watch with a full refund 30-day trial period. Call now, 800-413-7152. 800-413-7152. 800-413-7152. That's 800-413-7152.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefontaine, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met with NATO foreign ministers in Romania to drum up support for Ukraine as Russia bombards energy infrastructure going into the frigid winter. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg.
Russia is using brutal missile and drone attacks to leave Ukraine cold and dark this winter. President Putin is trying to weaponize winter, to force Ukrainians to freeze or flee.
The Supreme Court on Tuesday wrestled with a dispute over a Biden administration policy that prioritizes deportation of people in the country illegally who pose the greatest public safety risk. Chief Justice John Roberts tells Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar the interpretation of federal law requiring the removal of all illegal immigrants.
I think anyway, shall means shall. What do we do in that situation?
If this court were to actually adopt that interpretation of the statute, then I think that it would be incredibly destabilizing on the ground.
Yeah, I didn't ask you what it would be. I want you to know what we should do. Should we still fulfill our responsibility to say what the law is, and then it's up to Congress and the executive to figure out a way to comply with that?
At the center of the case is a September 2021 directive from the Department of Homeland Security that paused deportations unless individuals had committed acts of terrorism, espionage, or egregious threats to public safety. The Senate has passed legislation enshrining same-sex marriage into law and repealing the Defense of Marriage Act. It ensures the federal government recognizes a same-sex marriage even if a couple moves to a state where same-sex marriage is not recognized. In a 61-36 vote, 12 Republicans joined all Democrats in approving the bill. The measure now goes back to the House. More on these stories at townhall.com.
You've got advanced prostate cancer, but you're not waiting around. You want straight talk, the facts about Orgovix.
Orgovix Relagolix 120 milligram prescription tablets is a treatment for adults with advanced prostate cancer. Fact: Orgovix is a different kind of androgen deprivation therapy treatment, a pill, not an injection. Orgovix may cause serious side effects, including a heart condition called QT prolongation. Tell your doctor right away if you feel dizzy, faint, have a racing or pounding heart, or chest pain. Orgovix can cause harm to an unborn baby or miscarriage. Use birth control during treatment and for 2 weeks after Orgovix treatment. The most common side effects include hot flushes, increased blood sugar and blood fat levels, muscle and joint pain, decreased blood hemoglobin levels, increased liver enzymes, tiredness, constipation, and diarrhea. Other side effects include weight gain, decreased sex drive, and erectile function problems. Orgovyx may cause infertility. Talk to your doctor if infertility is a concern for you.
Go with Orgovyx. Ask your doctor. For more facts, visit gowiththefacts.com.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. First alert weather day this evening, mainly focused east and southeast of downtown. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm in the metro only through about 8 o'clock. Rain's not a guarantee, but any storms will be brief. We'll be on guard for an isolated severe storm. Otherwise, windy and turning colder overnight, a low down to 29 degrees, a much, much colder day Wednesday. We'll have sunshine, it'll be breezy, but the high just 40 for Wednesday. Thursday, dry, partly cloudy, and 44. That's the latest First Alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Rodney and Jen Wallner and the entire Wallner home selling team at Berkshire Hathaway. Call them today at 314-810-SOLD. 314-810-SOLD.
Are you looking for the cheapest prices on car insurance? Then call the Cheap Car Insurance Hotline right now. Hey, you're guaranteed to save money on your car insurance. Most car insurances can be canceled at any time. That means if you find a better deal, you can switch right away. We're not just one company. We offer most of the major brands of car insurance. We're like a discount supermarket for car insurance. And it doesn't matter if you have a good record or a bad driving record. Our agents are experts at finding you the right car insurance for your needs. Our average customer saves hundreds of dollars a year when they call us to switch. So why don't you make this 100%